Chapter 419. Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 transformed into two streaks of silver light as they flew toward Lin. Hai couldn't help but praise the two Gundams. As expected of metal puppets that are comparable to 4G Yongfangs, they're still as impressive as ever. "You're too kind, they're just some toys," and Lin replied in a humble manner. Hai's lips twitched, and he wanted nothing more than to hack this show-off to death. The humanoid wolf walked over at this moment. It had already sustained many injuries, and its entire body was covered in blood, and its aura was extremely feeble. "Here, white-scaled wolf god, eat this all-replenishing pill." And Lin pulled out a second-grade dragon blood spirit pill from his storage ring and tossed it to the humanoid wolf. The humanoid wolf caught the spirit pill and looked at Lin with gratitude in its eyes before swallowing it without any hesitation. "Let's talk as we go." And Lin rose into the air atop his brick. The humanoid wolf was at a loss. "Where to?" "To kill your divine leader. He's captured our senior disciple brother." And Lin spoke in an indifferent voice, as if he were talking about something very mundane. The humanoid wolf's hair stood on end upon hearing this, and it almost stumbled from its spot. You want to kill our divine leader? Are you crazy? I see, so you're the same as that human. But you can't just go and die." And Lin's expression froze. "This is an order from Master. Are you going to resist?" The humanoid wolf felt an overwhelming sense of impending doom engulf its entire body, as if it would immediately die if it didn't obey. It had no choice but to follow behind Lin with tears streaming down its face. The three of them rose into the air and flew toward the direction indicated by the divine talisman. "Master, the divine leader possesses the bloodline of the Black Phoenix and is one of the ancient divine generals of the ancient man tribe. Even though he's been bound by the 9 heavenly chains, he's still extremely powerful. You guys definitely won't be able to defeat him." The humanoid wolf spoke with shock and horror. It didn't think that it would be forced to sacrifice itself to the divine leader to save its own life. How could the word tragic even begin to describe this situation? It shuddered at the thought of how the divine master treated the traitors. Hearing this, and Lin's expression changed. "Continue. How strong is your divine master? Tell me in detail." The werewolf looked at Lin and said excitedly, "He's stronger than you anyway." "Master, don't go. You'll just be throwing your life away. I didn't even use my full strength when fighting you. How do you know he's stronger than me?" And Lin blinked and asked curiously. The humanoid wolf was rendered speechless. Looking at the determined expression on Lin's face, he knew that he couldn't back down now. He could only continue with a bitter expression. "The divine leader is the divine general of our tribe. His code name is Feng, and he's a return to Void Stage beast at the pinnacle of the Heaven Creation Stage. His power is roughly equivalent to a human at the pinnacle of the Return to Void Stage." Upon hearing the werewolf's words, and Lin's breathing became heavy. Return to Void Pinnacle? Would they be able to withstand a single finger from the Divine Master? He entered the Vermilion Bird trial grounds in an attempt to steal the power of the imprisoned Vermilion Bird, but he was sealed here by the Vermilion Bird's 9 heavenly chains. His power is constantly being extracted by this realm, and his power is now less than 1/10 of what it once was. Even so, his power is still far beyond your imagination. The humanoid wolf shuddered uncontrollably as it recalled the terrifying might of the Divine Master. A grave expression appeared on Lin's face. He was clearly aware of just how terrifying a being at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage was. Even with less than 10% of his power, it was still something that they would be unable to contend with. Aside from that, the Divine Master also possesses a white phoenix, which is also extremely powerful. In any case, it's not something that our tribe can contend with. The humanoid wolf's expression became more and more dejected as he spoke, and Lin gestured for the werewolf to continue and tell it everything it knew. The humanoid wolf heaved a forlorn sigh. The The demonic moon will reappear soon. When that time comes, all types of phenomena will occur in this world. The Divine Master is trying to use that human as a sacrifice to the demonic moon in order to alleviate the pressure of the 9 heavenly chains. This ceremony requires a type of black emperor grass, and our army was trying to obtain that black emperor grass, which is why we encountered you. And Lin relayed the humanoid wolf's words to Shangguan Yi and Mo Hai. Shangguan Yi and Mo Hai's expressions were as grave as a sheet of frost upon hearing this. Mo Hai heaved a forlorn sigh. How powerful is 1/10 of the power of a being at the return to void pinnacle stage? And Lin massaged his brows with an uncertain expression. About 100 Ji Yongfang? Mo Hai, Shangguan Yi, and Lin offered words of consolation. The humanoid wolf isn't actually sure how much power the Divine Master has left either. It only said that it's less than 1/10, which means that the Divine Master only has 1% of his power left, which is less than 1/10. A grave expression appeared on Shangguan Yi's face. Life is not a joke. We have to prepare for the worst. Mo Hai and Lin shuddered upon hearing this. They both recalled the horror of being afflicted by Shangguan Yi's halo of misfortune. That's right, they did have to prepare for the worst. What do we do? Were they going to save this person? All 3 of them fell silent. This enemy was far more terrifying than they had imagined. They felt as if there was a massive mountain weighing down on their hearts, and they were finding it difficult to breathe. Little Lang, are there any other powers that we should be wary of? For example, spell formations, traps, and so on. And Lin suddenly turned toward the humanoid wolf. The humanoid wolf didn't mind this nickname, and a wry smile appeared on its face. The Divine Master wouldn't set up those traps. He has great faith in his own power. And Lin fell silent for a moment before asking, "Does the Divine Master have any weaknesses?" The humanoid wolf scratched its head. The Divine Master likes to flex. Is that a weakness? And Lin, boom, the clouds in the sky in the distance suddenly began to churn like huge waves. The earth began to tremor violently as a series of pillars of flames broke through the ground and rose into the sky, illuminating heaven and earth. The demonic moon is about to appear. The humanoid wolf exclaimed in a panicked voice, and Lin's expression shifted and he began to accelerate. Mo Hai thought about it for a moment before gritting his teeth. Mr. Lin, if the enemy has already reached the return to void stage, then you should give up on this mission. There's no need to sacrifice your life for Brother Yang Yuan. And Lin turned to Mo Hai. What about you guys? Mo Hai fell silent for a moment before replying, I'll do what I can. Then I'll do what I can as well. And Lin pursed his lips. Don't just think of yourselves as disciples of the Vermilion Bird Sect. I'm an in-name disciple of the Vermilion Bird Sect. So why can't I do the same? Mo Hai gripped the Phoenix punishment plate tightly in his hand as he looked at Lin with a smile. I didn't make you my brother for nothing. I also value my life. If I really can't beat them, I'll run away without you reminding me. And Lin added. Mo Hai laughed heartily. I love dealing with honest people like you. Let's have a drink after we get out of here. Deal. And Lin nodded. Then you'll cook a delicious dish to go with the wine. Mo Hai continued, and Lin rolled his eyes. That's your real intention, isn't it? Mo Hai looked ahead with a smile and didn't offer any retort. Shangguan Yi looked at the 2 of them and didn't say anything before looking into the distance again. In the sky above, the thick clouds were being incinerated by the pillars of flames, and they began to churn and dissipate. A crimson light pierced through the clouds and descended upon the world. Chapter 420. Within a certain mountain range in the southern region of the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds, there were over 1,000 flaming mutant beasts kneeling on the ground. At the very center of these mutant beasts was a black, sacrificial altar. A series of strange red symbols hovered around the sacrificial altar, exuding scorching energy. At the center of the sacrificial altar, there was a young man who appeared to be around 15 to 16 years of age, who was tied up by ancient black vines. 5 black cudgels, each of which was around an inch thick, pierced through his limbs and chest. There was no blood flowing, but vein-like patterns appeared on the black cudgels, giving them an extremely sinister appearance. An extremely handsome man with a pair of black wings on his back looked up into the sky with a faint smile on his face. "It's almost time." Semi-transparent chains wound around his body and punctured his heart before connecting to the earth. The boundless power of the earth seemed to have been used to suppress this one being. The cry of a phoenix reverberated throughout heaven and earth as dazzling white flames lit up half the sky. A white, flaming phoenix of over 100 feet in size circled in the air, exuding boundless holy flame power that made all of the mutant beasts tremble in fear. The phoenix descended upon the earth like a holy beast, sweeping away all the filth in this world. Its feathers were spotlessly white, and its eyes were imbued with supreme divine might, as if it were a high and mighty god. However, when it approached the man, it rubbed its head against the man's arm in an affectionate manner. "White Phoenix, don't be in such a hurry. Once the demonic moon appears, we can begin the ceremony," the man said with a smile. The phoenix let out a clear cry and nodded in an extremely human-like manner. All of a sudden, the man turned toward the sky in the distance, and his expression became extremely dark. At this moment, the wind and clouds surged between heaven and earth, as if the heavens were enraged. However, the man's eyes quickly regained clarity, as if he had already let go of his worries. "So be it. We're only missing a stalk of black emperor grass. Even though it's a fly in the ointment, it does add a bit of ambience to the occasion with guests coming to congratulate us. Phoenix Army, why aren't you going to welcome our guests?" Following the man's command, the thousands of strange beasts outside the altar roared at the same time, unleashing a torrential aura as they charged in a certain direction. And Lin, Emohai, and Shangwan looked at the sacrificial altar several kilometers away from them. They saw a young man with a black rod impaled into his body, and their eyes burned with rage. At this time, the strange beasts had already rushed over, but the expressions of the 3 people were frighteningly cold. Over 300 bird-type spirit fire mutant beasts were the first to arrive, and they blasted flames at the 3 of them at the same time. The many flames gathered together, forming a wave of flames that was several hundred jang tall, carrying with it the power to incinerate all things. "Scram!" Emo Hai shouted loudly. He held the wind punishment disc in his left hand, and the word kill appeared on it. At the same time, a scarlet flame suddenly appeared on the scarlet saber in his right hand. He slashed horizontally at the flame wave that was pouncing towards him, and an extremely condensed scarlet flame, saber light, gushed out. Like a line of fire that divided heaven and earth, it directly smashed apart the flame wave that blotted out the sky. At the same time, the momentum of the saber did not stop. In an instant, it slashed across the sky and crushed more than 300 flaming birds behind it, turning them into a rain of flesh and blood. The 3 of them continued to move forward in the air. Their speed did not slow down at all. At this moment, over 400 mutant beasts had already caught up to them. All of them looked up into the sky and opened their mouths as scorching flames began to converge in the air. Boom, boom, boom. Over 400 mutant beasts blasted powerful fireballs at the same time, and it was as if hundreds of cannons had been fired in unison, causing the entire heaven and earth to tremor violently. The fireballs rained down upon the 3 of them, and there was no way they could evade them. Terrifying heat waves swept forth from their bodies in all directions. Shangwan flew forward, and she pointed her sword downward. At the same time, a hexagonal ice flower over 1,000 feet in size materialized beneath everyone's feet. The ice flower rotated at a high speed, and it was as if the entire space around it had been frozen solid. The hundreds of powerful fireballs began to shrink as they approached the massive ice flower. By the time they reached the bottom of the ice flower, They had already been reduced to tiny embers and completely disappeared from heaven and earth. A single ice flower had rendered over 400 mutant beasts speechless. Charge! Shang Guanyi's eyes were as cold as glacial ice, and she pointed her long sword down toward the ground. An extremely dazzling blue light suddenly burst forth from the water, droplet pendant on her neck. Crack! The huge hexagonal ice flower split open and transformed into over 1,000 frosty flying swords. They transformed into streaks of light filled with killing intent and slashed toward the 400 strange beasts on the ground. The ground was instantly transformed into a frosty slaughterhouse. The mutant beasts howled with anguish, and their blood was instantly congealed as a layer of white frost appeared on the ground below. When the three of them flew over their heads, the bodies of over 400 mutant beasts had all been covered in ice and snow, and not a single one of them had survived. About a kilometer away from the sacrificial altar, over 300 powerful spirit fire mutant beasts had gathered together with bloodthirsty expressions on their faces. Some of them were flying in the air with their bodies and shrouded in flames, while others were on the ground, accumulating powerful spell techniques. Wings of wind appeared on Enlin's back, and his body tore through the air in an untraceable trajectory. All of the mutant beasts were startled by this, and they were just about to attack when a golden light flashed through Enlin's eyes. A golden ripple proliferated outward for over a kilometer, imbued with boundless might and mighty will. Over half of the mutant beasts frothed at the mouth and fainted. The other half of the more powerful mutant beasts were completely exhausted, and they knelt onto the ground as if they were kneeling before their king. And Lin made his way toward them, and a massive sun appeared in the air with boundless scorching flames, incinerating all of the mutant beasts into ashes. A bunch of trash. And Lin spoke in a cold voice, but there was no emotion on his face as he strode toward the sacrificial altar. The man on the sacrificial altar's expression shifted slightly at the sight of the first two people. However, his expression faltered slightly at the sight of Enlin before turning to look at the approaching Enlin with an intrigued expression. The man was not upset in the slightest by the fact that his Phoenix army had been completely wiped out. On the contrary, he was very happy in his heart because 3 humans had arrived that were worthy of his enjoyment. This was like delivering food from afar. White Scale Wolf God, you did a good job. The man looked at the werewolves behind Enlin and the others with approval on his face. The humanoid wolf's legs almost gave out from under him at the sight of the man turning his attention to him. He didn't think that the man was actually praising him. He was definitely being sarcastic. This was a death sentence. The man turned toward the 3 people approaching the sacrificial altar as he spoke with a faint smile on his face. It's rare to have such esteemed guests, so I don't have much to entertain you with. May I ask, would you like to be braised by the White Phoenix or sliced alive by me, the Black Phoenix? Yang Yuan's eyes immediately became clear at the sight of the 3 people approaching him, and he yelled in a hoarse voice, "Run! Use the red teleportation badges to leave." The crimson vein patterns on the black rod flickered as if it was breathing, and Yang Yuan's face contorted as if he were enduring excruciating pain. And Lin glanced at Yang Yuan before speaking in a cold voice, "Braise the White Phoenix and slice the Black Phoenix. That's not a bad idea. Hee hee. Ants like you dare to say something like that." The Black Phoenix chuckled coldly as he looked at the 3 people before him with a disdainful expression before extending a single finger. "I can pinch all of you to death with just 1 finger." Chapter 421. And Lin wasn't enraged by the Black Phoenix's words. Instead, he asked, "What if you can't kill us with a single finger? You have to pay a price for not being able to flex, right?" The Black Phoenix's expression faltered as a sense of humiliation welled up in his heart. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked up into the sky with a cold smile. "Trying to tempt me? Ants don't have the right to negotiate with me." And Lin shook his head and heaved a forlorn sigh. "If you don't have the power to flex, then don't say things like you can kill us with a single finger. You're just a stupid C asterisk and T if you're trying to flex. The Black Phoenix's eyes suddenly focused on Enlin, and the terrifying aura of an ancient ferocious beast swept toward Enlin like a tidal wave. Enlin unleashed his divine might technique to its fullest extent as divine might burst forth from his eyes, making him appear as if he were a monarch looking down on ants from the heavens. Their gazes met, and heaven and earth changed color as gale-force winds howled and thunder boomed. The Black Phoenix smiled with a proud and disdainful look in his eyes. "Very well. You're just a powerful ant. I, the Black Phoenix Divine General, love to attack arrogant ants like you. I'll say it again. I can kill you with a single finger. If I can't kill you, then I'll release the human bound to the demonic ceiling vine." And Lin also smiled. "I hope you don't go back on your word." And Lin then transmitted his voice to Mo Hai and Shangguan Yi, relaying the Black Phoenix's promise to them. Mo Hai and Shangguan Yi stared at the Black Phoenix with peculiar expressions on their faces. A thought surfaced in their minds. Was this Black Phoenix a stupid C asterisk and T? However, they didn't dare to get complacent. Setting aside whether or not they could defeat the Black Phoenix with a single finger, even if they could, there was no guarantee that the Black Phoenix would keep his promise. No matter what, they had no choice but to fight with all their might. The Black Phoenix spread open his wings, and black flames engulfed his entire body, as if he were an abyss that could engulf all things. He raised his head and looked at the three of them before extending a single finger with a smile. "Now let me crush you to death." All of the vital energy in a radius of several kilometers began to surge, and an enormous vortex of energy began to converge toward the Black Phoenix's fingertip. Pitch-black energy was accumulating at the tip of his finger, and space began to tremble and distort. Just the energy fluctuations that were being emitted were enough to turn the ground within 100 meters into dust. The Black Phoenix was quite pleased with the grave expressions on their faces. This technique is known as the abyssal finger. When I was at my peak, I used this technique to severely wound a Darkwing tribe monarch. And Lin blinked his eyes in confusion. "You only managed to injure a true monarch at your peak? Was that very impressive? My Tao body can even slay true monarchs." The Black Phoenix's eyes narrowed, and energy erupted from his fingertip, transforming into a black beam of light that pierced through space with terrifying power. Heaven and earth dimmed, as if an abyss had descended, and Lin's black brick expanded to 30 feet in size, shielding Mo Hai and Shangguan Yi behind it. Boom! The ray of light collided with the black brick, causing a deafening explosion. At this moment, the earth collapsed, and a huge abyss appeared in the path of the ray. Black energy swept forth in all directions like the roar of a gargantuan beast. "It's over." The Black Phoenix clasped his hands behind his back expressionlessly. However, his world suddenly plunged into a vast expanse of darkness. Interesting. He turned around and pointed at a spot in the darkness with his index finger. Boom! A violent collision erupted, accompanied by the sharp screeching of weapons. Light returned to heaven and earth, and Enlin's evil slaying sword was unable to cut through the Black Phoenix's finger. Just as the two of them were locked in a stalemate, a blinding red light suddenly appeared behind the Black Phoenix. Mo Hai wielded his crimson saber and slashed it toward Enlin's back with lightning speed. In the sky above, Shangguan Yi's sword transformed into a blue shooting star as she hurtled toward the Black Phoenix's head. "You're just a firefly. How can you compete with the bright moon?" The Black Phoenix let loose an almighty roar as the black flames around his body surged to form a tornado that engulfed heaven and earth. Mo Hai's crimson saber struck the tornado of black flames, only to be engulfed by a terrifying force. In the sky above, Shangguan Yi was blasted flying by the tornado of black flames as she threw up a mouthful of blood. And Lin was also forced back by the tornado of flames. But crimson feathers suddenly appeared around his body as he was forced back, causing the space around him to twist and warp. The feathers converged to form an arrow with the demonic star flame as its tip, the great holy flame as its shaft, the setting moon flame as its tail, and the heavenly void flame as its armor. This was the first time that the Crimson God arrow had fused with one of the 4 divine flames. The Crimson God arrow shocked heaven and earth as it pierced through the air like a streak of starlight, incinerating everything in its path. The Black Phoenix looked at the oncoming Crimson God arrow with a disdainful expression. "You want to break through my black dragon tornado with your lowly flame techniques? You'll never understand what the difference in the ranks of flames represents. That's indestructible flames. That's the submission of all flames. He didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before a hole was blasted into the black tornado. The purple starlight pierced through the Black Phoenix's chest with the power of the stars, leaving a scorching, yet cold trail in its wake. Boom! The ground behind the Black Phoenix was also cracked open by the arrow, and the depth of the crack was immeasurable. Black blood splattered through the air. The Black Phoenix was dumbstruck for a second, unable to believe that he had been wounded. The Black Phoenix's expression became ferocious for the first time as blood flowed from his wound. "You dare to injure me? You lowly human! How dare you injure me? I'm going to kill you." The Black Phoenix spread open his black wings, sending terrifying shock waves through the air. His body transformed into a black line as he pounced toward Enlin. He instantly appeared before Enlin and stabbed a finger through the air. His index finger punctured Enlin's head, leaving a massive hole in the mountain several hundred meters behind him. Enlin dissipated into mist and disappeared on the spot. "You won't get away." The Black Phoenix turned toward a certain direction, and a huge amount of black flames suddenly erupted from his fingertip. However, right at this moment, the projection of a red phoenix suddenly appeared behind him before crashing toward him. Boom! This attack was imbued with the terrifying power of an ancient will, and it knocked the Black Phoenix flying. Mo-Hai held the wind penalty disc in his hand with a determined expression as he injected his power relentlessly into the disc. The water droplet-shaped pendant hanging from Shangguan Yi's neck began to churn with energy. A blue long sword projection extended for over a kilometer, transforming the ground within a radius of over a kilometer into a layer of frost. The long sword was aimed directly at the Black Phoenix's head. The Black Phoenix gritted his teeth as he placed his finger in front of the sword projection, and a round black shield appeared before him. The sword ray was extremely sharp, and it actually cut the black round shield into 2 halves. Then it chopped down on the finger. The Black Phoenix could see a gash appear on the finger, from which the blue long sword had sunk deep into the finger. A light breeze blew past, and Enlin leaped out from the black shadow with streams of wind revolving around his sword blade as he stabbed toward the Black Phoenix's heart. The sword projection arrived in a flash, and it was so fast that the Black Phoenix had no time to dodge. The evil slaying sword was a pinnacle immortal tool, and at the instant it stabbed forward, a peculiar black light appeared on the tip of the sword. It was as if the sword had slain countless demons in a soundless manner. Splat! The black long sword plunged into the Black Phoenix's heart, and blood splattered through the air again. Enlin, Shangguan Yi, and Mo-Hai all looked up at their powerful enemy with rapt attention. The Black Phoenix's expression stiffened slightly, and he stared blankly at the tip of the sword protruding from his heart for a few seconds. He chuckled. I, the Black Phoenix, am a divine general who stands proudly in the heavens. To think that I would be forced into such dire straits by a few juniors. Do you think you've won?" The Black Phoenix suddenly gripped onto the tip of the evil-slaying sword tightly as he turned his head around to look at Enlin with a cruel smile on his face. "Do you think I'll die if you stab my heart?" Enlin's heart jolted, and he swallowed as he looked at the Black Phoenix. The Black Phoenix continued with a sinister smile. "Lowly beings like you will never be able to understand how powerful I am, and you will never be able to defeat me." Enlin blinked. I understand that. But why did you grab my sword with your bare hand? We agreed before the battle that you could only use one finger. Isn't that breaking the agreement by using your bare hand? Isn't it time to let him go? And Lin's words reverberated through the air, and everyone instantly fell silent. The Black Phoenix's evil-slaying sword trembled slightly as an indescribable sense of humiliation and rage welled up in his heart. Die! Killing intent burst forth from his eyes as he let loose an almighty roar. Black flames surged violently around the Black Phoenix's body before suddenly exploding. Boundless black flames engulfed everything like a black sun, engulfing everything within a radius of over 1,000 feet. Chapter 4:22. Boom! The black flames abruptly exploded to form a massive ball of flames that enshrouded Enlin within. Shangguan Yi had already retreated as fast as she could when she sensed what was happening, but she was still caught in the shock waves of the explosion, and burns began to appear on her skin. Enlin! Mo Hai roared with rage and shock on his face. As the terrifying black flames wreaked havoc, and Lin's body suddenly passed through the black flames. His body was enshrouded by a blue light, and he began to fall to the ground. His body was slightly charred, but there were no signs of severe injuries on his body. His white and blue silk robe was barely visible. It was all thanks to the heavenly ice silkworm robe that he was able to evade that terrifying attack. And Lin looked up at the black flames in the sky with a cold expression as he forcibly stabilized his body. The heavenly ice silkworm robe could only be activated once in a short period of time, so he wouldn't be so lucky next time. Shangguan Yi and Mo Hai both heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that Enlin was unharmed. How dare the mighty divine general of the ancient man tribe go back on his word? Do you take your word for nothing? Enlin spoke in a cold voice as he looked up at the black ball of flames in the sky. The black flames dissipated, and the Black Phoenix reappeared. Black blood was still flowing from the holes in his chest and heart, but his aura had not diminished in the slightest. The Black Phoenix glanced at Enlin. I, the divine General Black Phoenix, do not need to explain my actions to others. Enlin's lips twitched slightly. He had never seen someone who would go back on their word in such a self-righteous manner. White Phoenix, the Black Phoenix called out. The White Phoenix rose into the sky from the center of the sacrificial altar before flying to the Black Phoenix's side. A powerful aura swept forth in all directions as holy flames seemed to be able to purify the heavens, striking fear into the hearts of onlookers. Go and take care of those 2 humans. As for the last one, I'll show him what true power is like. The Black Phoenix's killing intent seemed to be trying to pierce through the air to kill him. The White Phoenix let out a clear cry and began to flap its wings towards Mo Hai. White flames gushed out from its body. This was a pure and flawless divine flame. It was as if a great sun had descended, incinerating everything in the world. Mo Hai's body trembled as he sensed the vast and terrifying flame power. Who would have thought that a legendary divine flame mutant beast would exist here? How fortunate and exciting! He shouted loudly, and the word kill appeared above the wind punishment disc. An ancient and boundless power was attached to the blade, and it furiously chopped at the White Phoenix. Boom! The crimson flaming saber slashed against the white divine flames, causing the heavens and earth to shake violently. The violent explosion instantly raised the mountain range within a radius of several thousand feet to the ground. Mo Hai's body flew out of the range of the explosion. His body was burned red by the flames, but his eyes were clear. The White Phoenix pounced toward Mo Hai again, but Shangguan Yi's clear frost sword was already upon it. All right, the annoying mice have been driven away. Are you ready to accept the hellish torture? The Black Phoenix looked down at Enlin from above, and the expression on his face gradually receded into an emotionless expression. You're just a piece of trash who doesn't even care about your own words. What right do you have to flex to me? soared immortal in Lin. And Lin was also looking at the black phoenix, expressionlessly with disdain on his face. The black phoenix harumphed coldly, and the projection of a black phoenix suddenly appeared behind him. This phoenix was several thousand feet in size, and it stood proudly in the heavens as if it were the lord of all creation. Its inky black feathers obscured the entire sky. Its inky black eyes were as deep as black holes, and it stared at Enlil as an ancient, ferocious might erupted from its body, threatening to crush all living beings in this world. It had to be said, this was an extremely terrifying scene. And Lin narrowed his eyes, and an extremely powerful aura began to proliferate from his body. His eyes were as dark as ink, and a black cape instantly materialized on his back, which danced in the wind like the night sky. Black ribbons revolved around the evil-slaying sword, and its blade rested in the darkness, but it was hiding its most dangerous fangs. The turbulent space around them began to fall silent as the aura of death and doom proliferated outward like ripples. A hint of envy welled up in the black phoenix's heart as he looked at Enlil, who was standing proudly on the ground like a monarch of darkness. His attire was a little flashy, and he should have been the one showcasing his power. He quickly calmed his emotions before speaking in a cold voice. "You're just a flashy but useless power. Die yuan." The black phoenix pointed in Enlin's direction, and the phoenix projection behind him opened its cavernous mouth as boundless black flames surged toward Enlil, instantly engulfing the ground within a radius of over a kilometer. Soon, an extremely deep crater was melted into the ground by the powerful flames. The black phoenix knew that there was no way that Enlil would be able to evade such a large-scale flame attack, and he was just about to smile in satisfaction when his expression faltered slightly upon seeing the scenes unfolding before his eyes. A cloak as black as the night sky enshrouded Enlin's body, keeping all of the flames at bay. He swept the cloak through the air to dispel the flames. His evil-slaying sword pierced through the air like darkness engulfing all light, and he suddenly appeared before the black phoenix before abruptly crashing down with his long sword. The black phoenix reacted extremely quickly as he clenched his fist to meet the oncoming long sword. Boom! The long sword clashed with peerless might, and the resulting shockwave exploded forth for several kilometers, even shattering the clouds in the sky. And Lin's body was torn apart by the immense power of the fist, and he flew back through the air as blood churned within his body, and he threw up a mouthful of blood. The black phoenix only took half a step back as a cruel smile appeared on his face. The black phoenix projection in the sky had already spread its wings, and its feathers transformed into a series of black flaming swords that stabbed toward Enlin's body. Each and every one of the swords was imbued with extremely fearsome flame power, which was equivalent to a full-force attack from a soul formation final stage cultivator. And there were over 100 of these black flaming swords. And Lin hovered in the air atop his sword as his black cloak transformed into a black river that hung in front of him, forming 99 black vortexes that were imbued with the power to repel all things, thereby forming the most resolute barrier. Boom, 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 the black flaming swords rained down upon the black vortexes, causing the vortexes to crumble layer by layer. Soon, all of the black flaming swords had been vanquished by the black vortexes. The vortexes transformed back into a cloak that appeared on Enlin's back, fluttering in the wind as it extended for several thousand feet, as if it were trying to enshroud the black phoenix projection. And Lin's expression remained cold as he charged toward the black phoenix, with his evil-slaying sword in hand. The white-scaled wolf-man's body trembled as he looked on from afar. Never would he have thought that his master would be able to find an opportunity to wound a divine leader, and he certainly didn't think that his master would be able to fight a divine leader to a standstill. The Black Phoenix was a divine general of the man tribe. Even though his power had been sealed, he was still far more powerful than a soul formation stage being. And Lin was only at the soul formation initial stage, but he already possessed the power to battle such a powerful being. The white-scaled wolf man looked up at Enlin, and a sense of admiration welled up in his heart for the first time. In the sky above, the black clouds slowly parted. Within the misty void, a blood-red full moon began to appear. The glow of the moon began to enshroud the earth, painting the earth a crimson color. Chapter 4:23. The demonic moon began to appear in the sky, and a mystical song began to play. As Enlil listened to this song, the scene of countless beasts mating appeared before his eyes. During the mating process, their bodies would split open, and their flesh and blood would rain down upon the earth. Souls wailed in anguish, and a demonic song led them to fall. This absurd scene caused Enlil to fall into a daze, but his eyes quickly regained clarity. He turned toward the Black Phoenix to find that the Black Phoenix seemed to be even more affected than he was, and his entire body was rooted to the spot. How could Enlil pass up such a good opportunity? His cloak enshrouded the entire sky, and a black sword projection soared into the heavens before striking the Black Phoenix's body. Another ghastly gash appeared on the Black Phoenix's body, but it was exactly because of this injury that he managed to regain his senses, and he turned his gaze toward Enlil. A translucent chain suddenly appeared on his body, connecting to his heart and extending into the interior of the earth, faintly discernible. Under the illumination of the demonic moon, the chains shimmered with a golden light, and his aura weakened even further. The demonic moon has appeared, and I don't have much time left. I can't let lowly humans like you stand in the way of my grand plan. Even if I have to sacrifice my lifespan, I'll kill all of you here. The Black Phoenix suddenly slapped his hand toward the top of his head. Boom! A powerful force crushed his head, and an earth-shattering boom reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The Black Phoenix's life force was severed, and his body plummeted to the ground. Enlil stared at the Black Phoenix with shock etched on his face. What was going on? The Black Phoenix had committed suicide. But right at this moment, the massive Black Phoenix projection in the sky suddenly transformed into boundless black flames that pounced toward the Black Phoenix's body. The scorching flames engulfed the earth, forming an airtight black ball of flames. A few seconds later, the black ball of flames began to contract, and an even more terrifying power began to emanate from the center of the ball of flames. Enlil's heart skipped a beat as he sensed the terrifying aura emanating from the ball of flames. A phrase suddenly sounded in his mind. Nirvana, rebirth. The flames dissipated to reveal a man clad in a suit of black flaming armor, standing on the ground with a pair of wings spanning over 100 feet. The uncoordinated size ratio of the wings to the body caused the wings to block out the moonlight. They sucked and devoured everything they came into contact with, causing people to feel a different kind of oppression and despair. Whether it was intentional or not, there was also a black flaming cloak on his back. It stretched for hundreds of feet, as if he wanted to compete with Enlil in size. The Black Phoenix had been reborn from the ashes. The sense of danger he gave Enlil was more than 10 times stronger than before. The Black Phoenix stared expressionlessly at Enlil as a black, flaming sword materialized in his hand. Puny human, I only need 3 strikes to kill you. Enlil gripped his evil-slaying sword with a grave expression, not daring to underestimate his opponent. Bang! The air exploded. The first sword. The Black Phoenix's body pierced through the air, transforming into a streak of black flames that instantly appeared in front of Enlil. In that instant, the black flame longsword drew a deadly arc. Enlil relied on the domineering aura accumulated by the endless night to resist the black flame longsword head-on. Rumble! The 2 extremely powerful forces clashed, sending shockwaves surging for several kilometers. The black flames formed a ball that expanded for over a kilometer, pulverizing the earth below. The entire heaven and earth dimmed for a split second as a result of this clash. Black cracks began to appear in the space around Enlil, unable to withstand the terrifying power of the collision. A terrifying power swept through Enlil's entire body, and he felt as if all of his organs had been torn apart as he threw up a mouthful of blood. And Lin's body flew through the air like a cannonball before crashing into the side of a black rock mountain, causing the entire mountain to tremor violently. The Black Phoenix didn't stop there. He raised his black flame long sword high into the air, and pure flame power soared into the sky, forming a black longsword that extended for several kilometers. The sword flame seemed to be able to incinerate the entire sky as it slashed down toward Lin with the power to incinerate heaven and earth. Second sword strike. The huge mountain was instantly sliced in half by the huge black sword, and the two Hebs continued to descend upon Lin. Boom! An earth-shattering sword projection imbued with black flames completely engulfed and pulverized the mountain, and Lin's body was riddled with wounds as he half knelt to the ground. A disdainful smile appeared on the Black Phoenix's face as the black flame sword in his hand became even purer. A miniature Black Phoenix was circling around the black flame sword, making the power of the sword more and more fearsome. Not bad to be able to defend against two sword strikes that are barely at the return to void initial stage. However, it's time to end this. The final sword strike will be a true return to void initial stage sword strike. You're dead for sure. The Black Phoenix walked toward Lin, covering a distance of over 1,000 feet with each step he took, and the power of his sword increased with each step he took. When he took the final step, the power of his sword had already risen to a pinnacle. Third sword strike. The Black Phoenix's body pierced through space, and his sword was aimed directly at Lin's heart. And Lin closed his eyes as a black mist revolved around his body. Origin energy of the netherworld. Dawn! An extremely dazzling light burst forth from the evil-slaying sword, as if dawn had arrived at the end of the night. The black sky was torn apart by the white sword projection, and the black flames were suppressed by the paramount light. The Black Phoenix's eyes widened, and he felt like his head was spinning. He was unable to see the man before him clearly under the illumination of the white light. The power that had been repressed for so long was finally going to be unleashed when it broke through its shackles. The white sword projection lit up heaven and earth as if it were day, and it even eclipsed the light of the demonic moon. This was a powerful, dazzling power that was filled with boundless hope. The sword projection fell, purifying the heavens. The Black Phoenix didn't know how he had been struck, but the paramount sword strike had sliced through his flaming armor and sliced his head all the way to his stomach. Only Lin's voice reverberated in his ears. First sword strike. Black blood gushed forth as the sword projection dissipated, and the light of the demonic moon enshrouded the earth again. Mournful music sounded, as if the earth itself were weeping. The Black Phoenix fell to the ground, howling in agony as a ghastly sword wound appeared on his body. This was a wound that almost tore his body in half. Black blood flowed over the earth, and the 9 heavenly chains became more and more solid. How could you be so powerful? How could you be so powerful? He stared at the approaching Lin with incredulity etched on his face. You're too weak. And Lin made his way toward the Black Phoenix with his evil-slaying sword in hand. Even though he no longer possessed the Endless Night technique, his paramount aura had not diminished in the slightest. The Black Phoenix's body trembled as he stared at Lin, and he suddenly felt like he was becoming taller and taller. Impossible. I can't be defeated by a lowly human like you. He looked at the sacrificial altar in the distance, and a vicious expression suddenly appeared on his face. How can I, the divine General Black Phoenix, be defeated? I'm going to kill you, no matter what price I have to pay. He slammed his hand toward the top of his head again as he spoke. Boom! The top of his head shattered again, and black flames erupted from his body again, instantly enveloping his entire body. And Lin's expression darkened upon seeing this. Are you done yet? The black flames melted the Black Phoenix's body before materializing once again. A vast and powerful aura erupted forth as a Black Phoenix, broke through the flames and descended upon the world. The phoenix was only 30 feet in size, and the black flames around its body were like peerless divine flames that could engulf heaven and earth. An extremely powerful ancient power emanated from its body, and it stared at Enlil with a seemingly substantial killing intent radiating from its eyes. Perhaps it was due to its severe injuries, but the power displayed by the Black Phoenix was even more powerful than during its first rebirth. However, its aura was extremely feeble, as if it were struggling to hold on. The Black Phoenix spoke in a cold voice. "Human, I admit that you're different from other ants to be able to force me to this extent. Hence, I'm going to use the cruelest method to seal your consciousness in the demonic moon altar and burn it for billions of years." And Lin looked up at the Black Phoenix in the sky without any fear on his face. The evil-slaying sword began to disappear, and he pulled out a white long sword from his storage ring. This was an intermediate-rank spirit tool, 9-star frost sword. And Lin spoke in a cold voice. "Noob, let's see how many more times you can die. This is the second strike." 6 Strikes of the War God, Sword Burial. Chapter 4:24. The Black Phoenix stood proudly in the sky and spread its wings. With a single flap of its wings, black flames swept through the entire sky, as if heaven and earth had been placed into an oven. Countless golden cracks began to appear on the surface of Enlin's intermediate-rank spirit tool, the 9-star frost sword. Bam! The white long sword shattered like glass. The blade of the sword shattered into a series of white blade projections that resembled snow and starlight. A mystical aura began to proliferate outward. The cycle of life and death was reversed, and death was rebirth. The Black Phoenix seemed to have sensed that something was amiss, and it unleashed all of its power as it swooped down toward the ground. Die. Black flames imbued with the power to incinerate all life began to descend. It was like a gargantuan net that encompassed heaven and earth, leaving no room for escape. And Lin pointed a finger at the Black Phoenix in the sky. 9-star frost sword burial. Blade as stars, sacrifice as frost. Slay the heavenly barbarians. The white blade projections, hovering in the air, suddenly transformed into countless dazzling stars as they soared into the sky from the ground and shrouded in black flames. This was a technique that had been unleashed with the essence of a single sword strike, and even the space around it began to twist and warp. The boundless black flames raining down from the sky were suddenly frozen by the power of the sword burial technique, and a massive hole was blasted open. The white starlight faintly formed the shape of a long sword, which leaped through the hole and slashed toward the Black Phoenix. The flames around the Black Phoenix's body flared up, and a river of black flames shot forth from its mouth toward the starlight flying sword. Whoosh! The starlight flying sword sliced the black flames in half before transforming into a silver river in the sky that descended with the mighty power of heaven and earth. The high and mighty Black Phoenix in the sky looked up at the sword strike that seemed to have been materialized from countless stars, and there was shock and despair in its eyes. One breath later, its body was sliced in half by the sword strike. The black flames dissipated, and the Black Phoenix's blood splattered through the air as the two halves of its body plummeted to the ground. The origin energy of the netherworld around and Lin's body began to disappear, and he looked up into the sky with a slightly dazed expression. He saw a crimson object in the shape of a water droplet hovering in the air where the Black Phoenix's body had been torn apart. And Lin didn't even think before casting a spell to scoop up the object and put it into his storage ring. If the boss dropped something, it would definitely be a top-tier item. Let's take it first. He looked at the White Phoenix in the distance, where the battle was still in a stalemate. The White Phoenix was only slightly weaker than the Black Phoenix, but it was still extremely terrifying. Even though Shangguan E and Mo Hai were both more powerful than the average soul formation final stage cultivator after using their mystic treasures, they were still completely outclassed by it. And Lin wanted to go and help them, but he found that he could no longer muster any strength. Shangguan Yi and Mo Hai also knew that this was the moment where victory or defeat would be decided. Mo Hai's wind punishment disc had already cracked. With an angry roar, he activated all the power of the Phoenix punishment disc. The long blade streaked across the sky like a crimson rainbow, and the cries of phoenixes soared into the sky. The crimson blade slashed out a crimson light that spanned over 1,000 meters. It contained all of the Phoenix punishment disc and Mo Hai's power, and this attack was enough to slice a mountain in half. The white phoenix folded its wings, forming a translucent eggshell around it. Rumble! The crimson saber projection struck the eggshell, and the resulting shockwaves pulverized and melted the ground within a radius of several hundred meters. Extremely powerful flames tore through the eggshell layer by layer before striking the white phoenix's body, upon which white blood splattered through the air as the phoenix wailed in anguish. Shangguan Yi flew through the air atop a snowflake, and her long sword transformed into a massive frosty sword over 1,000 feet in length, instantly covering the ground within a radius of over a kilometer in ice and snow. This is the final attack. The blue water droplet below Shangguan Yi's neck glowed with a brilliant light, and a mighty blue projection suddenly appeared behind her. This was the projection of the great empress, who stood proudly in the heavens. She wore a divine crown on her head and a blue muslin imperial robe on her body. Her eyes were imbued with the frozen starry sea, and boundless might engulfed heaven and earth as she suppressed the white phoenix. Her descent caused snow to fall from the sky and the earth to turn white. The great empress pointed a finger at the frosty sword, and the power of the sword increased explosively once again. Its color gradually turned a deep blue, and the space around it seemed to have congealed from the terrifying temperatures. Heavenly frost, ice slashes all things. Shangguan Yi's slender figure stood proudly on the snowy ground as she pointed a finger at the white phoenix. The frost great sword turned into a dark blue rainbow, and the terrifying aura around it cut open the ground. Everything in its path was frozen and cut in half. It pressed forward, sweeping away everything in its path. The white phoenix's divine flame domain was once again broken by the streak of blue light, and an expression of despair appeared in the proud white phoenix's eyes for the first time. The sword slashed through the air, and the white phoenix fell. White blood, mixed with flames, splattered all over the ground. The proud and powerful phoenix was sliced in half just like that, and it plummeted to the ground. Did we win? A relieved expression appeared on Mo Hai's face as he looked at the fallen phoenix. Shangguan Yi strapped her sword to her back, and a warm smile appeared on her face. The phoenix's life force has been severed, and there's no way it can come back to life. And Lin's body swayed slightly, and he collapsed to the ground with a smile on his face. Ha ha ha. That wasn't easy, but we finally won. White Phoenix, help me. White Phoenix, come here. A voice suddenly sounded, and Lin and the others shuddered as a chill welled up in their hearts. And Lin turned to look at the two halves of the Black Phoenix's body, where black flames were burning. At the same time, the White Phoenix's body transformed into a white flame that rose into the sky before flying toward the black flames. The two flames combined to transform the earth into a sea of black and white flames, upon which a brand new life was being born. The black and white flames were like a pair of fish, and the phoenix was reborn. The Black Phoenix's body materialized as a pair of white wings appeared on its back. The power of purification and engulfment combined to create a paradoxical combination of life and destruction. One of his eyes was black while the other was white, creating a world of light and darkness. Are you in despair now, ants? The Black Phoenix walked out from the flames expressionlessly before looking at Shangguan Yi and Mo Hai, both of whom had expended all of their energy, before turning its attention to Enlin. Enlin gritted his teeth as he stood before the Black Phoenix, and the evil-slaying sword in his hand began to ring incessantly, as if his battle intent was surging. However, The after effects of using the origin energy of the netherworld made it so that Enlil couldn't even muster up his vital energy. The Black Phoenix chuckled mockingly. Hee, you can't even hold your weapon properly in your exhausted state. How are you going to fight me? He spread open his palms, and a white flame appeared on his left hand, while a black flame appeared on his right. He walked toward Enlil like a fiend celestial. Enlil suddenly burst into laughter as he looked at the approaching Black Phoenix. Who says I can't use my power just because I've exhausted my vital energy? The Black Phoenix's footsteps faltered, and a cold expression appeared on his face. You're about to die, and you're still trying to put on a brave front? Enlil smiled. Third strike. His words were like a curse, and the Black Phoenix's heart jolted in shock. At this moment, Enlil had already opened his mouth, and a terrifying energy converged in his mouth before erupting forth. Boom! The golden pillar of light pierced through the air like a sharp sword before instantly puncturing the Black Phoenix's chest. An earth-shattering boom erupted. The golden pillar of light extended for over 10,000 feet, and the ground within a radius of several kilometers was pulverized by the fearsome shock waves. The air around the pillar of flames twisted and warped, and a series of cracks as thin as a spider's web appeared, emanating an aura of destruction and chaos. The Black Phoenix stared blankly at the gaping hole in his body as black blood trickled from the corners of his mouth. How could this be? What kind of technique is this? He half knelt to the ground, and he looked up at Enlil with confusion and shock etched on his face. Enlil also stared at the Black Phoenix with a cold expression. This is a mighty fat attack. You won't understand. Keep reviving. Let's see how many more times you can revive. Your 3 strikes can't even kill me once, but I can kill you once with each strike. If you revive again, I'll kill you every time. I still have a 4th strike, a 5th strike, and a 6th strike. Let's see if you have more lives, or if I have more. Enlil's voice reverberated in the Black Phoenix's ears, striking him with a sense of despair. Monster. The Black Phoenix gritted his teeth. Not bad. In your eyes, I've finally evolved from an ant into a monster, Enlil said with a smile. He walked toward the Black Phoenix, step by step, until he was right in front of the Black Phoenix, looking down at him from above. Even if you're a phoenix, you're only fit to tremble before my sword. Enlil slashed a hand through the air, and a black sword projection sliced through the air before decapitating the Black Phoenix. A white streak of light appeared from the Black Phoenix's head before crashing into Enlil's chest. It was too fast, and Enlil had no time to evade. Whoosh! The light merged into Enlil's body, upon which a violent explosion erupted in his sea of vital energy. Chapter 4:25. Enlil was shocked to see this, and he immediately turned to look at his own sea of vital energy. His vast sea of vital energy surged violently, and Kirin was also jolted awake by this. The projection of a white phoenix appeared in the air above his sea of vital energy. Every time it flapped its wings, it would unleash a powerful flame power that caused his sea of vital energy to churn. And Kirin was enraged, and he transformed into a bolt of golden lightning before opening his mouth to bite the white phoenix. The white phoenix was not to be outdone, and it blasted a huge amount of flames from its mouth toward Kirin. And Kirin was caught off guard, and he was incinerated by the flames before crashing into his sea of vital energy. Just when Enlil thought that Kirin was going to be pummeled, boom! A terrifying, thunderous roar resounded. A bolt of golden lightning flashed from the sea of vital energy and instantly punctured the white phoenix's body. The phoenix wailed in anguish before crashing into his sea of vital energy. And Kirin took this opportunity to charge toward the white phoenix before biting down on its head. Thus, the phoenix's head was eaten PFFF, and Kirin spat out the phoenix's head with a disdainful expression. The phoenix's head transformed into a ball of flames before flying toward the body that had fallen into the sea of vital energy, where it reformed into a complete body. Thus, an earth-shattering battle erupted between the two of them in the sea of vital energy. And Lin, F*CKU, what the F*CK is going on with this phoenix? Has my sea of vital energy become a battlefield? Right at this moment, the Black Phoenix's headless body, once again, transformed into black flames. The demonic moon became even more crimson, and it was as if the earth had been draped in a vibrant shade of red. Countless red feathers fluttered in the sky, and a sorrowful sound filled the entire space, as if the world was crying. The Black Phoenix was reborn from the black flames once again, but this time there was no triumphant expression on his face. Instead, his face was deathly pale, his aura was extremely feeble, and there was a hint of confusion in his eyes. And Lin gritted his teeth. "Are you King done? Do you want to die again?" Mo Hai and Shangguan immediately ran toward Enlin upon seeing this. They knew that Enlin was the one in the most danger right now. Enlin was already at the end of his rope, and he could die to the Black Phoenix's attacks if he was even the slightest bit careless. A ferocious expression appeared on the Black Phoenix's face upon hearing Enlin's words. "Where's my white phoenix? Where did it go?" Enlin blinked his eyes and said with a smile, "So you don't know. It has been suppressed in my Chi Sea and will never be able to rise again." "Impossible," the Black Phoenix replied in a violent manner as it glared at Enlin with eyes that were about to spew flames. "I stole this power from the vermilion bird. This is the true power of the vermilion bird. How could it have been absorbed into your sea of vital energy?" Enlin was shocked to hear this. So that white phoenix was the true power of the vermilion bird? In other words, the reason the Black Phoenix was suppressed here was because of the white phoenix, and now that white phoenix had been subdued by him. Wonderful! And Lin was elated. "Sai, thank you for helping me obtain the true power of the vermilion bird. I have nothing to thank you for. Why don't I give you the fourth sword here?" When the Black Phoenix saw the gleeful look on Enlin's face, he felt as though he was about to go crazy. When he heard the fourth sword, he was so enraged that he spat out a mouthful of blood. "You've gone too far. I won't let you off." The Black Phoenix roared as black flames burst forth from his body again, threatening to engulf everything in the world. Mo Hai and Shangguan had already arrived at this moment, and they positioned themselves in front of Enlin with determined expressions on their faces. In the sky above, the demonic moon suddenly rippled like water as crimson moonlight fell upon the Black Phoenix's body, causing his body to shudder. The ancient chains around his heart suddenly transformed from semi-transparent to solid, and a dazzling golden light burst forth from them as an extremely fearsome, sealing power surged forth like a tsunami. The Black Phoenix's flames dissipated, and he clutched his chest with an agonized expression. The restrictive power emanating from the chains grew more and more fearsome, and all of a sudden, the chains surged through the air like a golden dragon, dragging the Black Phoenix toward the sacrificial altar. "Impossible! I have the true blood of the holy beast. The 9 heavenly chains can only seal my power. How could they be dragging my body?" The Black Phoenix yelled with shock and horror, and Lin came to his senses before speaking to the Black Phoenix in a slow voice. "Is the true blood of the holy beast you're talking about Red Droplet? Thank you very much, but I've already stowed it away in my storage ring." PFFF. The Black Phoenix threw up a large mouthful of blood as he stared at Enlin with grief and indignation. "How could you do this? How could you?" Enlin clasped his hands behind his back and raised his chin with a disdainful expression. "You can only blame yourself for messing with someone you can't afford to mess with." Black Phoenix. The Black Phoenix's body was dragged to the altar by the chains, following which countless chains rose up from the ground of the altar, wrapping around his body. "Enlin, I, the Black Phoenix, swear that as soon as I get free, I'll exterminate your entire family and burn your soul with black flames for hundreds of millions of years." The Black Phoenix roared in a thunderous voice. "You've already said that line once." and Lin replied in an indifferent voice, "Black Phoenix." A brilliant golden light erupted from the chains, and the Black Phoenix's body slowly disappeared into the sacrificial altar. Holy F asterisk CK, that cockroach has finally been subdued. And Lin's body gave way as he fell backward. A fragrant breeze blew past him, and Shangguan was already rushing toward him. It felt good to fall into the arms of a beautiful woman. Then his head smashed into a hard, hairy chest. Are you all right, master? The humanoid wolf revealed a set of white teeth with a fawning smile, and Lin rolled his eyes. He was starting to regret accepting such a useless wolf servant who was more of a hindrance than a help. And Lin, are you all right? Shangguan, and Mo Hai also gathered around Lin with urgent expressions on their faces, and Lin shook his head. I'm fine. I'm just a little exhausted. Let's go and save Brother Yang Yuan first. Everyone nodded upon hearing this. The humanoid wolf carefully carried Lin in his arms before making his way toward the sacrificial altar. The humanoid wolf's attitude toward Lin had changed from one of dissatisfaction to one of complete admiration, and it had even evolved into a form of fanatical reverence. Even the high and mighty divine leader had been beaten into the ground by Lin and killed several times in a row. This was something that he didn't even dare to imagine in the past. The divine leader was no match for his master in terms of combat, and the divine leader was no match for his master in terms of flexing either. In particular, his master's final 3 sword strikes had completely won him over. Master, I've decided to follow you for the rest of my life. The humanoid wolf looked at Lin with deep love in its eyes, and Lin felt a chill run down his spine, and he felt as if he was being held by a freak. Put me down. My Gundams should be ready by now. I'll let them carry me. And Lin spoke in a cold voice. The humanoid wolf's heart was filled with grief as tears welled up in its eyes. Master, are you disdaining little wolf? And Lin, F***CK off. Chapter 4:26. The 3 of them made their way over to the sacrificial altar and looked down at the man who had been bound by vines and punctured by black rods in his chest and limbs. And Lin was being carried by the 2 Gundams. And he turned to the humanoid wolf beside him. Little Lang, what do we do with these things? The humanoid wolf replied with a grave expression. These ancient black vines are known as demonic sealing vines, and they will automatically contract as long as you burn them. However, I don't know where this black rod came from. It was prepared by the divine leader specifically for this sacrificial offering. And Lin relayed the humanoid wolf's words to Mo Hai and Shangguan Yi. Mo Hai immediately unleashed crimson flames upon hearing this, which burned toward the thick vines. Sure enough, the vines quickly contracted under the scorching flames before transforming into a ball of vines about 10 feet in diameter. Yang Yuan fell from the sky and was caught by Mo Hai. Mo Hai unleashed his crimson flames upon the ball of vines again upon seeing Yang Yuan on the brink of death. The crimson flames whistled through the air, but the ball of vines hurtled back as if it had a life of its own. Shangguan made a grabbing motion, and a powerful frost intent converged to instantly freeze the ball of vines into a ball of ice. This thing is a little strange. Let's take it back to the sect for the elders to study, Shangguan suggested. Mo Hai didn't say anything as he looked down at the black rod in Yang Yuan's body. He could sense that the rod was constantly devouring Yang Yuan's life force and had the ability to seal space. Shangguan made her way over to Yang Yuan and tried to grab onto the rod, but her body was immobilized by an extremely powerful force. Her brows furrowed tightly as she stared at the black rod with a cold expression. This is the reason why Yang Yuan can't use his spatial teleportation badge to return to the sect. Yang Yuan opened his eyes and forced a smile onto his face. Thank you for risking your lives to save me, but unfortunately I won't be able to repay you. The demonic moon has appeared, and this place is very dangerous. You should leave now. Brother Yang Yuan, what are you talking about? If you want to leave, then we'll leave together. Mo Hai gritted his teeth. Yang Yuan shook his head lightly. I can't drag you down any longer. Once the demonic moon disappears, the myriad beasts will reappear. Time is of the essence. If you don't leave the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds now, I'll sever my own meridians right now. The muscles on Mo Hai's arms bulged as he pulled on the black rod with all his might. His eyes were red as he said, It wasn't easy to get to this point. I won't abandon you. A smile appeared on Yang Yuan's face. Please apologize to Sister Tao Ji for me after we get out of here. He slowly closed his eyes, as if he was going to use the final method. Don't be so sentimental. I and Lin haven't even made a move. Why have you already decided to give up? And Lin placed his hand on the black rod, inscribing a complicated array diagram on it. White lines formed in the air as Lin desperately circulated his long, exhausted essence chi. He tried his best to overcome the after effects of using the origin energy of the netherworld and forced his essence chi to flow through his meridians. His hand trembled uncontrollably, and his eyes were bloodshot as blood seeped from the corners of his mouth. And Lin, you... Mo Hai stared at Lin in shock. Shang Guanyi's heart also jolted as she stared blankly at Lin. Yang Yuan slowly opened his eyes upon hearing a voice to discover a man with blood seeping from the corners of his mouth and a trembling hand inscribing a formation with a smile on his face. The formation glowed with a brilliant light before merging into the black rod in front of Yang Yuan's chest. And Lin grabbed onto the rod with one hand before pulling it out with all his might. Splat! Blood splattered through the air as the rod was pulled out by Lin. Mo Hai and Shangguan both faltered upon seeing this. You did it? Mo Hai was ecstatic. Yang Yuan also stared blankly at Lin as a glimmer of hope welled up in his heart. I checked the information in my memory and discovered that it was most likely a purple star sacrificial ritual. Looks like I was right. Let's continue. And Lin spoke with a smile on his face. The fervent light in the humanoid wolf's eyes became even more pronounced. In its eyes, Lin had become an omnipotent, powerful being. After that, the 4 metal rods were pulled out one by Lin. His face paled slightly with each rod that was pulled out. He couldn't help but throw up a large mouthful of blood after pulling out the final rod, and his energy had been completely depleted to the point of dizziness. Mo Hai and Shangguan both clenched their fists as they stared intently at Lin. They wouldn't try to persuade Lin to stop, as they could tell from Lin's expression that he had already made up his mind and wasn't going to stop. After pulling out the final metal rod, Yang Yuan's vital energy began to circulate again, and a hint of color returned to his pale face. His body had been severely wounded, but at least his life was no longer in danger. Before Lin even had a chance to heave a sigh of relief, heaven and earth began to tremor violently again. A series of gargantuan projections appeared in the sky, all of which exuded extremely powerful auras. Suddenly, a black that appeared in the center of the blood-colored full moon in the sky. And Lin and the others looked up to find that the demonic moon was like an extremely sinister eye that was looking down upon everything in this world. We have to get out of here. The entire southern region of the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds is going to become a battlefield for the heroic spirits of the ancient man tribe. Yang Yuan yelled in a panicked voice. Boom! Just as they were speaking, a huge mountain nearby suddenly crumbled, and a rhinoceros several thousand feet tall emerged from within. It raised its head to the sky and roared into the sky, sending shock waves rippling through the earth within a radius of over a kilometer. This rhinoceros was extremely powerful. Even though its body was a little illusionary, the aura it exuded made everyone's heart thump in fear. This was only the beginning. At this moment, a series of bottomless cracks began to appear on the ground below. Sky-devouring pythons, centipedes that were thousands of feet long, scorpions shrouded in poisonous mist, and some strange ancient beasts crawled out of the cracks and appeared on the land that was enveloped by the crimson moonlight. In the sky above, a series of flying mutant beasts began to tear at one another. There were WYRMS soaring through the clouds, skeletal birds with bodies as sharp as swords, huge falcons flashing with lightning. Energy clashed, transforming the entire sky into a blood-stained battlefield of carnage. An indescribable, sorrowful wail erupted between heaven and earth, and all four of them were struck by a series of peculiar hallucinations. Use your teleportation badges to return to the Vermilion Bird sect immediately, Yang Yuan yelled, and Lin, Mo Hai, and Shangguan all pulled out their red badges before exchanging a glance with one another before activating them. And Lin stowed the 2 Gundams into his storage ring before thinking about it for a moment before stowing the 5 immortal sacrificial instruments into his storage ring as well. All 4 of their Vermilion Bird badges began to glow with a dazzling light as a teleportation spell formation appeared beneath their feet. At this moment, an ancient mutant beast with 2 heads, 6 legs, and a mace in its hand discovered Lin and the others, and it let loose an enraged roar as it charged toward Lin and the others. This mutant beast was over 1 kilometer tall, and each and every step it took caused the ground to tremor violently. Its aura was as vast as the sea, and it was extremely terrifying. The white-scaled wolf god's legs gave out from under him at the sight of the ancient mutant beast, and he immediately rushed toward Lin before wrapping his arms around Lin with tears streaming down his face. Master, don't abandon Little Wolf. Little Wolf doesn't want to die, wah, and Lin looked at the humanoid wolf with a resigned expression. But this teleportation badge seems to only be able to teleport me out. Wah, I don't care. I'm following you no matter what. Don't go. The humanoid wolf sobbed like a little puppy as he tugged at Lin's clothes relentlessly. At this moment, the ancient mutant beast had already reached them, and its mace was like a small mountain crashing down upon them. The teleportation spell formation glowed brightly, and Lin and the others disappeared on the spot. Boom! The mace created a massive crater in the ground within a radius of several hundred meters as an earth-shattering boom erupted. Chapter 4:27. And Lin could feel the space around him changing, and he soon arrived on a circular platform. The radiant sunlight shone down on his body, and the light breeze carried the faint fragrance of the divine tree, making him feel as if he had just arrived in heaven from hell. His body and mind were completely relaxed, and his vision darkened as he finally fell unconscious. Master! And Lin hurriedly called out, and Lin felt as if his head had crashed into a hard and furry chest, and he immediately lost consciousness. He was immersed in darkness for an indeterminate amount of time, and Lin moved his fingers slightly, and he felt a warm and soft hand holding onto him tightly, making him feel a little comfortable and at ease. He opened his bleary eyes, and the first thing he saw was a woman in a jade, barley ink garment leaning against the side of the bed. It seemed to be nighttime, and the faint candlelight shone on the woman's fair face, making her appear gentle and gentle. And Lin looked at the woman beside him in silence, and his heart was a little touched. After waking up from his ordeal, he found that there was someone silently accompanying him. This was a very good feeling. Su Xiaolan's head was leaning against the side of the bed, and her delicate eyelashes were closed. Her breathing was slow and soothing, and her collar was slightly open, revealing her delicate collarbone, which glowed under the candlelight. And Lin didn't want to wake up Su Xiaolan, who had already fallen asleep. However, on second thought, it must be very uncomfortable to sleep leaning against the side of the bed. He felt that the bed was quite big, and perhaps the 2 of them could make do. Just as he was struggling with this dilemma, Su Xiaolan had already opened her eyes. Her slightly misty eyes instantly lit up upon seeing Lin, and they were like beautiful stars in the night sky. The 2 of them stared at each other, blinking their eyes. "You're awake. How do you feel?" Su Xiaolan spoke first. Much better. I just feel a little cold. I'll feel a little better if someone can warm my bed for me." And Lin said with a flushed face. As soon as he said this, his heart began to beat wildly. "How am I still cold?" I'm so nervous. I'm so hot. The atmosphere was a little strange, and Lin felt Su Xiaolan's grip on his hand tighten. Su Xiaolan suddenly smiled and said, "So that's how it is? Your wolf servant is still waiting in the next room. Do you want me to call it over to warm your bed?" When Lin heard this, his heart immediately turned cold. He hurriedly said, "No need. I don't feel cold anymore." Seeing Lin's horrified expression, Su Xiaolan squinted her eyes and smiled. Her eyebrows curved like a seductive crescent moon, which was exceptionally alluring. "Yes, but the werewolf doesn't have a teleportation token, right? How did it come out with me?" And Lin was puzzled. Su Xiaolan gave it some thought before explaining. Even the elders were surprised about this. They speculated that it might be related to the slave contract you signed with the werewolves. Your auras are connected, and there was physical contact at the time, so the teleportation token determined that you and the werewolf were one and the same and teleported you out together. And Lin came to a sudden realization. It looked like he and the werewolf were quite fated. Seeing as that was the case, he decided to let it follow him for now. A thought suddenly occurred to him. "Xiaolan, have you awakened your domain yet?" "I have. On the day you came back, I finally attained my own domain," Su Xiaolan replied with a joyful expression. "Haha, congratulations. I knew you would be fine." And Lin was very happy to hear this. If it weren't for the fact that he was still quite weak, he would have leaped up and given Su Xiaolan a hug. "By the way, what happened to you in the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds? It looks like Brother Yang Yuan is very grateful to you, and even the Ice Queen Shangguan is very impressed by you." Su Xiaolan turned to Lin with a glowing gaze. "I was too busy taking care of you when Mo Hai was reporting to the sect, so I didn't know what happened. Why don't you tell me about it?" A faint smile appeared on Lin's face. "It's a long story. The final battle was earth-shattering, and I have to start from when the Phoenix was imprisoned in the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds. He didn't need to exaggerate, as he had already done a very bad *sus job in that battle." Candlelight flickered in the quiet night as Lin recounted his glorious feats in high spirits. Su Xiaolan rested her chin on her hand and listened with keen interest. The next morning, Lin woke up in high spirits. Even though he was a little disappointed that Su Xiaolan had returned to her room to rest, it was still a very good feeling. After learning that Lin had woken up, all of his beast pets rushed over to take care of him. Dabai had even tamed the werewolf into an extremely obedient beast, and it was calling him Big Brother Bai. The werewolf was a heavenly fire mutant beast and a descendant of the ancient man tribe. It was at the true power final stage, which was equivalent to a soul formation final stage, mighty lord. However, it was taking care of Lin like an obedient servant, and Lin was a little unaccustomed to it. In the words of the werewolf, Lin was lightning, Lin was light, Lin was its only faith, and it was willing to follow Lin to the pinnacle of its wolf life. Lin had a serious expression on his face when he heard this. If it was going to be this mushy next time, he was going to kick it out of the sect. The werewolf became as obedient as a husky upon hearing this. After that, Mo Hai, Lu Jiaji, and Shangguan also came to visit Lin, and they brought many spirit pills and spirit fruits with them. Lin naturally couldn't refuse these treasures, so he accepted them all. Lu Jiaji was trapped within a mystic realm at the time, so he didn't have time to save Yang Yuan. He was extremely remorseful after hearing about what happened to Lin and the others. As for Ji Yongfang, no one knew what he was doing, and no one cared about him. After that, an unexpected guest came to visit Lin. This was a beautiful woman in a white Taoist robe. She was Yang Yuan's Tao partner-to-be, Tao Ji, and she could be considered as Lin's senior sister. She extended a solemn curtsy toward Lin after arriving. "Brother Lin, Yang Yuan is still recovering from his injuries, so I brought him here to visit you. If it weren't for your desperate struggle, Yang Yuan would have most likely—" She was choking up as she spoke, and tears flowed from her eyes. Thank you so much," and Lin immediately waved his hands at the sight of her emotional senior sister. It's only my duty. As disciples of the same sect, it's only right for us to help one another. You don't have to do this, senior sister. Tao Ji wiped the tears from her eyes with a smile. My wedding with Yang Yuan is in 3 years. You have to attend it. And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this before replying with a smile, Of course. Tao Ji placed a storage ring on Lin's bed. I won't disturb your rest any longer. This storage ring contains a gift from Yang Yuan, and I've added some things into it. You can't refuse this gift, or you'll be disrespecting your senior sister and senior brother, understand? And Lin nodded with a solemn expression at the sight of Tao Ji's serious expression. All right, I'll do as you say. He didn't have the habit of refusing gifts. Throw whatever you have at me, ha ha ha. A satisfied smile appeared on Tao Ji's face before she departed from the room, and Lin picked up the storage ring and began to refine it. This was an ordinary storage ring with a space of around 10 feet. He didn't think that there would be anything too shocking inside, but he soon discovered that he was wrong. Chapter 4:28. The storage ring wasn't very spacious, but the items within were all exuding powerful energy fluctuations, clearly indicating that they were all high-rank items. There were 100 vital stones glowing with a dazzling white light, which was equivalent to 1,000,000 spirit stones. There were also 2 7th-grade immortal pills, spirit regeneration pills, which had extremely potent healing properties and could also enhance one's life force. There was a high-rank spirit sword and 3 intermediate-rank spirit swords. These were most likely spirit tools that Yang Yuan had gifted to Lin after witnessing how wasteful Lin's sword burial technique was. There was also about 1/2 kilogram of blood god jade, which could be made into a bed or chair that could be used to slowly strengthen and consolidate one's domain. This was the most desirable item for soul formation stage cultivators. Just this item alone was worth 500,000 spirit stones. It was a pity that it was useless to Lin, as he didn't even have a domain. The final item was a ring that glowed with a faint yellow light, and Lin couldn't identify what it was. There was a slip of paper on it that introduced the origin of this item. This was a mystic treasure that Yang Yuan had found in an ancient underground palace in the southern region of the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds. These 4 rings were each engraved with the words North, South, East, West. The wearer of these rings would have a certain probability of summoning the power of a heroic spirit of the ancient man tribe. Furthermore, Yang Yuan speculated that these rings were most likely symbols of status within the ancient man tribe. However, he was unable to decipher what these rings were. All he knew was that these were his greatest rewards from his trip to the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds. Now that his life had been saved by Lin and the others, he was giving these 3 rings to them as a token of gratitude. And Lin, Mo Hai, and Shangguan each received the North, South, East, and East rings. And Lin brought out the East ring. There were golden ripples flowing on the surface of the ring, and it was extremely beautiful to look at. He heaved a forlorn sigh. He didn't think that Yang Yuan would be willing to give him a treasure like this in order to repay his debt of gratitude. He refined the ring before putting it on his finger. A vast and powerful intent emerged from the ring before latching onto his consciousness. This was an ancient black dragon that hovered above the stars. Its eyes were like the sun as it opened and closed, and they were imbued with boundless ferocious might. And Lin's heart palpitated as he experienced that incomparably powerful will. If he could summon this power, it would definitely be able to destroy the world. However, he knew very well that with his current strength, it was impossible for him to summon this black dragon. He even felt that the black ancient dragon was the true owner of the ring. And Lin shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He closed his eyes and continued to rest at the Vermilion Bird sect. The demonic sealing vine that Shangguan had brought back from the Vermilion Bird sect had been placed in a restricted area by the elders of the sect. This was an ancient plant that was very similar to the Vermilion Bird sect's divine tree, so it was extremely valuable. At the same time, Lin and the others' experiences in the Vermilion Bird trial grounds were also widely circulated within the Vermilion Bird sect. The story of how the three of them risked their lives to save Yang Yuan in the southern region of the Vermilion Bird trial grounds drew the admiration and admiration of the sect disciples. Gradually, the disciples of the Vermilion Bird sect began to develop a general impression of the most powerful in-name disciple in history, Lin. Hey, have you heard? Our in-name disciple, Lin, killed the divine general of the Ancient Man tribe 3 times in the Vermilion Bird trial grounds. All of the divine generals of the Ancient Man tribe are returned to Void Stage mighty figures, and I heard that the Black Phoenix is at the pinnacle of return to Void Stage. Why did I hear that Lin killed the Black Phoenix 99 times in a row? In the end, the entire Vermilion Bird trial grounds wept tears of blood, and even the demonic moon wept and begged for mercy before Lin was sealed in the sacrificial altar. Regardless of which version is true, he's super bad *SS. I have to find him in the future and have a chat with him. That's true. But why is he only an in-name disciple if he's so powerful? You probably don't know about this, but he's a student of the Celestial Court's Shioshin United University and doesn't care about being an in-name disciple. He's even more famous in the Celestial Court, and he's already a legendary figure with many powerful titles, such as Heaven and Earth Collapsing with a Single Finger, Bag God, Self-Detonation Demon, Tamer of Divine Lightning. Lin focused on recuperating, and his injuries were improving day by day. 5 days later, he finally made a full recovery from his injuries. When he rode on Dubai around the Vermilion Bird sect, he felt as if the gazes of the disciples had changed quite a bit. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he could roughly describe these gazes. In the past, they only thought he was handsome, but now not only did they think he was handsome, but he also had an aura to him. Lin, do you see the adoration in the eyes of all the disciples? How do you feel? Su Xiaolan walked beside Lin and asked in a sweet voice. Lin smiled. Not much. I'm already used to it. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at Lin and harumphed lightly. It's a good thing you have such good lightning manipulation techniques. Otherwise, you'd be struck to death by lightning sooner or later. Then do you know why I'm so good at lightning manipulation? Lin asked with a mysterious expression. That's because you're the only one in this world who can flex. Su Xiaolan snapped. Lin's expression faltered upon hearing this. He didn't think that his line would be stolen by Su Xiaolan. Xiaolan knows me the best. Lin heaved a sigh of relief after a short while. A smug smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face, as if to say, I've known you for a long time now. By the way, your injuries have mostly healed, and Yang Yuan's injuries have mostly healed as well. The elders of the sect have decided that the Holy Vermilion Flame Blessing Ceremony will commence tomorrow. As long as you're acknowledged by the Holy Vermilion Flame, you'll be able to obtain the power to manifest a holy flame in your sea of vital energy, Su Xiaolan continued. Do I need to make any preparations? Lin asked. Just don't eat the holy flame. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips. Lin. Before they knew it, the two of them had arrived at the border of the Vermilion Bird sect. The lush canopy here extended for over 100 meters before reaching an altitude of tens of thousands of meters. Lin arrived at a place that only the two of them knew about. This was a very thick tree branch which resembled a wooden path that could allow 2 people to walk side by side. There was also a long wooden chair on the branch. Lin told Dubai to play off to the side before sitting down beside Su Xiaolan on the chair. They looked up at the blue sky and white clouds in the distance, as well as the vast land down below, and savored the tranquility of this place. A light breeze blew past, carrying with it the faint aroma of the divine tree. The green leaves rustled in the wind. Lin, do you think you have a protagonist's halo? Su Xiaolan suddenly asked. Lin was shocked. How did you know? Because of your ability to attract trouble. Su Xiaolan snapped. But when it comes to attracting trouble, Sister Shangguan is the only one I admire. And Lin was quite humble this time. I also admire Sister Shangguan Yi. She's a very tragic character from birth. Su Xiaolan heaved a forlorn sigh as her brows furrowed slightly. Her mother passed away during childbirth when she was born. And Lin's expression became serious upon hearing this, and he listened carefully. After that, vital energy gathered within her body, which summoned a demonic wolf, which brutally murdered her entire family. She was also captured by the demonic wolf for its own consumption. However, the demonic wolf encountered a cultivator along the way. The cultivator slew the demonic wolf and sent her back to the village, but none of the villagers wanted to adopt her. The cultivator saw that she had a special constitution, but his cultivation base wasn't very high, so he didn't know how to nurture her. After a few twists and turns, she was finally sent to our sect and became the disciple of Taoist priest Qi Yan. However, Taoist priest Qi Yan died during a mission less than a year after that. After that, Taoist master Ling Yun became her master. In less than half a year, Taoist master Ling Yun died in a battle with the Blood Clan. Then there was Taoist priest Huang Long. In less than a year, he was poisoned and died. After that, Taoist priest Hong Zhao became her master, but he died during a mission to annihilate a demonic sect 3 months later. This is very strange. Everyone knows that Sister Shangguan is not to be blamed for what happened, but no one dares to accept her as their master anymore. And Lin. Chapter 429. And Lin asked with a curious expression, what happened next? A hint of admiration appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she thought back to the past. Sister Shangguan was very strong, very strong. She could take the insults and insults from the other young disciples with a smile on her face, and she wouldn't retort no matter how harsh their words were. She was able to cultivate on her own without a master. She was able to survive in an environment where she was abandoned and isolated. She was never meant to be with the Vermilion Bird sect. Her constitution naturally repelled fire, and she couldn't even use the most basic fire manipulation techniques. She was mocked by the other disciples for a long time because of this. However, she didn't give up and persevered in her cultivation. She flipped through many cultivation method tomes and used her special constitution to attain an extremely powerful Tao of ice in the end. Some people tried to persuade her to leave the Vermilion Bird sect and go to the Ice Emperor Palace in the Kingdom of the 9 States, but she refused. She said that the Vermilion Bird sect had given her a second chance at life, and she was willing to protect this sect for the rest of her life. Later on, when one of the sect's disciples went out to train, she and the other sect's disciples encountered a soul formation stage essence beast. The disciples ran for their lives as they blamed Sister Shangguan Yi's bad luck for attracting the soul beast to them. Sister Shangguan Yi didn't say a word in the face of all the insults and scoldings. Instead, she charged into the fray with her spirit-nurturing final stage cultivation base. If it weren't for the elders who arrived in time, Sister Shangguan Yi would have most likely died. After that incident, most of the disciples in the sect changed their impression of Sister Shangguan Yi. Even though she was still plagued by bad luck and would occasionally drag others down with her, no one blamed her anymore, as everyone knew how much she loved the sect and how hard she worked to get along with the other disciples. Sister Shangguan Yi never complained about anything. In order to prevent others from being tainted by her bad luck, she would intentionally keep her distance from others, and when others were in danger, she wouldn't hesitate to lend a helping hand. Now, she has earned the respect of most of the disciples in the sect, and it's been a very difficult journey for her to reach this point. And Lin fell silent as he listened to Su Xiaolan's recount. Only now did he truly understand what kind of person Shangguan Yi was. She had been tortured from beginning to end. Just how strong was Shangguan Yi to be able to live a life of despair as if it was a life of struggle? It sounded easy, but it was actually very difficult. Sigh, I saw some cultivators going against the heavens at every turn, as if the heavens owed them something. However, if Sister Shangguan Yi is trying to defy the heavens, then I think it's quite natural for her to do so. After all, the heavens are simply too unkind to her. And Lin heaved a faint sigh. Su Xiaolan shook her head in exasperation. That's right. There was one time when Senior Sister and I went to pick spirit herbs. There were clearly only a couple of dark clouds in the sky, but a bolt of divine lightning suddenly struck us. What do you think is going on? Now that she thought about it, it seemed rather interesting. A moment later, she couldn't help but smile. And Lin thought back to his time fighting alongside Shangguan Yi, and the more he thought about it, the more he found her to be an interesting woman. All of a sudden, a thought occurred to him. Xiaolan, I want to give you a present. And Lin said with a sly expression. A cautious expression appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. What do you want? I don't deserve a reward. You gave me a chance to manifest my holy flame. Isn't that a reward? Don't worry, this is just a necklace I picked up from the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds. And Lin brought out a crimson water droplet from his storage ring. It had been pierced through by Lin with a warm white chain, and it exuded extremely pure and vast flame energy fluctuations. This was none other than the holy beast true blood that Lin had obtained after slaying the Black Phoenix, and it was most likely the blood of the holy beast Vermilion Bird that had been imprisoned in the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds. Su Xiaolan's lips twitched as she looked at the necklace. A necklace you picked up? One look and one could tell that this item was an ancient, supreme treasure. It was extremely precious. I really don't have the face to accept this gift from you. And Lin replied with a nonchalant expression. This item contains extremely pure fire-type energy and true intent, and it even contains an inheritance. However, I don't have a fire-type bloodline, so it's useless to me. You have the bloodline of the Divine Phoenix, so you can use this drop of blood to its fullest potential. Hence, giving it to you is the most suitable choice. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips in silence. Here, I'll put it on for you. And Lin held the necklace toward Su Xiaolan's neck with a wide grin. Su Xiaolan's eyes were as clear as autumn water, and a faint blush appeared on her face. She lowered her head slightly, and she didn't resist Lin's actions. The white chain clung tightly to her neck, which was as fair as a swan's, and it shimmered with the light of the sun. A tear-droplet of true blood nestled against her soft, fair skin, and the combination of blood and tears created a natural sense of beauty. And Lin asked with a smile, "Do you like it?" Su Xiaolan didn't answer. Instead, she raised her head and gazed at Lin. "Is it beautiful?" And Lin nodded with a serious expression. "It's beautiful." Su Xiaolan turned her head to the side, and her voice was as clear and refreshing as a spring. "Then I like it." A subtle atmosphere permeated the air, accompanied by the crisp chirping of birds. Some were excited and some were palpitating, and Lin reached out and slowly held the hand next to him. He could feel Su Xiaolan's delicate, fair hand tremble slightly, but she didn't reject it, and Lin could still feel the softness and warmth in his hand. That feeling was very moving. At this moment, the breeze was as gentle and beautiful as the sun. "Humph. Don't think you can bribe me with a necklace. I'm only letting you hold my hand because you're afraid of heights," Su Xiaolan said in an extremely gentle voice. And Lin faltered slightly before blinking in indignation. "Then can I hold your hand when I'm scared in other situations?" Su Xiaolan chuckled. "What are you afraid of?" "I'm afraid of the dark, and I'm super scared of walking at night." "Oh, and I'm also afraid of the sun." "I'm also very scared of the sun," and Lin said with a serious expression. Su Xiaolan, "All right, seeing as you've given me a present, I'll give you a present in return. You can't refuse." Su Xiaolan winked at Lin in a mischievous manner, and Lin nodded in agreement, but he was feeling a little uneasy. Su Xiaolan brought out the divine flame bead from her storage ring and placed it in Lin's hand with a smile on her face. You don't have a fire-type bloodline, but you can use the power of the 4 divine flames to great effect in battle with this immortal tool. You have to accept this present. And Lin stared blankly at the crimson golden bead in his hand and didn't know what to say. The divine flame bead was Dongfang Ming's most powerful treasure when he was still alive. It was a high-rank immortal tool and was priceless. He didn't think that Su Xiaolan would give it to him just like that. And Lin was a little regretful for accepting this present. "Xiaolan, you're so good to me," and Lin said in a slow voice as he gripped the divine flame bead tightly. "You're not bad to me, either." A clear and sweet-sounding voice rang in his ears, making him feel at ease, like the white clouds in the sky. Chapter 430. After another day, the Holy Vermilion Flame Blessing Ceremony, which was held once every 5 years, was held at the Vermilion Bird Sect. This ceremony was a rare occasion for the Vermilion Bird Sect. On this day, the Holy Vermilion Flame would baptize all of the sect members. Furthermore, it would cast its power of holy flame on the most exceptional disciples so that they could manifest the Holy Vermilion Flame in their sea of vital energy. Tens of thousands of sect disciples gathered on the Holy Flame Plaza, awaiting the commencement of the ceremony. Dabai, Xiaoqiu, and the other beast pets were not disciples of the Vermilion Bird Sect, so they could only rest in the courtyard. And Lin and Su Xiaolan made their way to the Holy Flame Plaza side by side. Their arrival attracted the attention of most of the disciples, and Lin had been too popular recently, and many of the disciples were both curious and respectful of him. "Look, that's Lin. He doesn't look like he has 3 heads and 6 arms, and he doesn't look like he has much of an aura. He's quite handsome, though. You don't know **T. Only a true master can hide his aura and return to his natural state. Look at his eyes. They're as deep as the ocean, but they also seem to contain the Tao of the universe. Ah, he's so handsome. Wake up. Don't be a starry-eyed fool. Humph, he's only here for the power of the holy flame. What do you have to praise him for? You can't say that. He's already a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Sect, and he risked his life to save Brother Yang Yuan in the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds. If he's only here for the holy flame, there's no need for him to do all that." That's right, and Lin is doing what a disciple of the sect should do, so he has the right to fight for the power of the holy flame. And Lin and Su Xiaolan arrived at the center of the plaza amid a flurry of discussion. There were many elders and core disciples with powerful auras here, and most of them nodded in greeting upon seeing Lin, while others smiled to express their friendliness. Su Xiaolan looked around the plaza before speaking to Lin in a low voice. "You're the one who's going to receive the power of the holy flame. Go stand in the red area." And Lin looked in the direction Su Xiaolan was pointing and saw 5 people standing there. Mo Hai, Shangguan Yi, Lu Jiaji, Jiongfang, and Yang Yuan were all there. He separated from Su Xiaolan and walked towards the red area. "Haha, and Lin, you're finally here. We were just talking about you." Mo Hai greeted Lin with a hearty smile, and Lin smiled and said, "Are you talking about how awe-inspiring and domineering I am in battle?" Mo Hai and Lu Jiaji both rolled their eyes upon hearing this, and Shangguan, he couldn't help but chuckle. Lu Jiaji interjected, "Mo Hai and Shangguan, you're talking about your cooking skills. They're saying that your cooking is the most delicious dish in this world, and they're praising you to the heavens. I don't believe that you're that powerful. How about you let me experience it sometime, brother Lin?" And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this before nodding. "Sure, the market price is 100,000 spirit stones per pot. Prepare the money first." Lu Jiaji was dumbstruck upon hearing this. So they were telling the truth about the astronomical price. Are King insane? 100,000 spirit stones per pot? I'll take 10 pots, a clear voice sounded at this moment. Everyone turned toward the source of the voice to discover a young man around 15 to 16 years of age, looking at Lin with a smile on his face. Lu Jiaji's expression darkened slightly. "Brother Yang Yuan, even if Lin saved your life, You can't just give him money like this. I'm not giving you money. I believe that Enlin's dishes are worth this much money. Yang Yuan stared deeply into Enlin's eyes, which seemed to be glowing with absolute trust. Lu Jiaji opened his mouth, but he was unable to say anything in response. Enlin was almost moved to the point of tears. Yang Yuan was the first person to trust Enlin's cooking skills so much before seeing him cook, even though Enlin really didn't have any cooking skills at all. Mo Hai and Shangguan both burst into laughter at the sight of Lu Jiaji's deflated expression. Ji Yongfang stood off to the side with a perplexed expression at the sight of the five of them getting along so well. What was going on? Was Shangguan not cold and aloof anymore? Was Yang Yuan not looking up at the sky? Hadn't Enlin only been in the sect for a few days? How did he become so close to these four people? Even if he was Yang Yuan's savior, surely he couldn't have become friends with them so quickly. Ji Yongfang was suddenly struck by a sense of defeat. Thinking back to how Enlin and Su Xiaolan had been hanging out together in the sect for the past 2 days, he couldn't help but feel enraged. Before they knew it, tens of thousands of sect disciples had already gathered on the plaza. The sect leader wasn't present, so the great elder of the Vermilion Bird sect, Qin Shinran, gave a speech. He spoke for over 100,000 words at an extremely fast speed, but the contents of his speech were clearly engraved into everyone's minds. I won't go into the details here, but the general gist of what he said was, as one of the 4 great sects of the Kingdom of the 9 States, our Vermilion Bird sect is an extremely bad asterisk as a sect. We have achieved many glorious feats in the past 5 years, and we have countless prodigies among our disciples. He also gave a detailed speech about what the next 5-year plan was going to be like, along with a few glimpses into the future. He also praised Enlin, Mo Hai, and Shangguan for risking their lives to save Yang Yuan in the Vermilion Bird trial grounds, and he hoped that everyone would learn from them. After that, it was time for the Holy Vermilion Flame baptism ceremony. The Holy Vermilion Flame hovered in the air above the plaza, and the pure white flames began to transform into a white flaming vermilion bird. The light from the flames became more and more dazzling, and everyone could only look down. However, an extremely peculiar burst of warmth descended from the sky and flowed into everyone's bodies, clearing their meridians, and their flame power also began to slowly increase. Everyone closed their eyes and enjoyed the baptism of the Holy Vermilion Flame, and Lin was no exception, and he could feel that the flame power within his body was slowly increasing. He snuck a glance at Shangguan to find that she was looking at the disciples around her with an innocent expression. Shangguan noticed that Enlin was looking at her, and her eyes flickered slightly. "You don't feel anything either?" And Lin shook his head. "No, I just wanted to see if you felt anything." "It's all right, senior sister. Just go on your own path, and don't worry about what others think." He offered some words of consolation before closing his eyes to enjoy the baptism of the Holy Vermilion Flame. Shangguan, the baptism of the Holy Vermilion Flame lasted for a very long time, and it continued all the way until nighttime. Only then did the vermilion bird slowly revert back to a normal ball of flames that hovered in the night sky. Tens of thousands of sect disciples opened their eyes, and there was a hint of satisfaction and joy in their eyes. And Lin could feel that the 4 divine flames within his body had become even more substantial. The effect of this baptism was comparable to eating a low-rank immortal pill. Even though the effects of the baptism of the Holy Vermilion Flame varied from person to person, this was a baptism that encompassed tens of thousands of people. As the saying went, one step at a time, one step at a time. The baptism of the Holy Vermilion Bird sect, once every 5 years, was enough to put the disciples of the Vermilion Bird sect far ahead of the disciples of the other sections. This was perhaps the foundation of a super sect. And Lin had also heard from Dubai that the mythological beast sect had a beast soul holy land, which was a place that provided ancient beast soul inheritances to soul formation stage soul beasts. Every soul beast in the sect could enter the beast soul formation stage soul beasts, and it was one of the most important treasures of the mythological beast sect. And Lin couldn't help but heave a forlorn sigh. The power of the celestial court was far more powerful than that of the four great sects. Unfortunately, there were many places where one had to become a member of the celestial court and hold a position in the celestial court before they could enter. Next up is the ceremony for the most outstanding disciples of the sect to receive the power of the holy vermilion flame. Yang Yuan, Shangguan Yi, Lu Jiaji, Mo Hai, Jiongfang, and Enlin, please prepare yourselves. Great Elder Qin Shinran's voice sounded again, and Lin's heart skipped a beat. The most critical moment had finally arrived. Chapter 431. In the center of the square, there was a white altar. The person receiving the power of the holy flame had to stand at the center of the spell altar and summon their projection of the vermilion bird flame wing. Only after receiving the holy vermilion flame's approval would the power descend upon them. In other words, even with the projection of the vermilion bird flame wing, if the holy vermilion flame didn't match that person's element, it wouldn't be able to obtain its power. According to past data, the chances of the sect's top disciples obtaining the power of the holy flame from the altar was only about 70%. Even the most talented disciples would fail. First up, Yang Yuan. Please step onto the spell altar, Grand Elder Qin Shinran announced. Yang Yuan glanced at Enlin before turning his gaze toward the holy flame in the sky. He calmly walked toward the white altar. Brother Yang Yuan will be able to progress to the return to void stage after obtaining the power of the holy flame. I'm so envious. Mo Hai sighed with emotion as he looked at the figure standing at the center of the spell altar. And Lin didn't seem to mind. Don't be discouraged, he consoled. You'll have a chance to reach the return to void stage after 100 years. After all, you're the most outstanding disciple of this generation of the Vermilion Bird sect. And then I'll be counting on your auspicious words. And Lin, you're extremely talented. In another 100 years, you'll definitely reach the return to void stage. Mo Hai said with a smile, and Lin sneered, Haha, are you looking down on me, Lin? Mo Hai, I'll be able to advance to the void return stage in 10 years at most. And Lin said solemnly, Mo Hai, can't we have a good chat today? Mo Hai's chest tightened. Right at this moment, Yang Yuan released the projection of the vermilion bird flame wing from his robes, and it hovered in midair. The feather projection was burning with golden flames. This was a phenomenon that only a high-grade vermilion bird flame wing could produce. The holy vermilion flame in the night sky seemed to have sensed something, and a mysterious ripple proliferated forth, drawing the golden flaming feather toward the holy vermilion flame before merging as one with it. The holy flame trembled slightly, following which a beam of white light descended. The light was imbued with the purest flame power, and it poured down upon Yang Yuan's body. The crowd of disciples cheered upon seeing this. This meant that Yang Yuan had already been acknowledged by the holy vermilion flame and had been bestowed with its power. They were cheering for the birth of one of the most powerful beings in their sect. After manifesting the holy vermilion flame, Yang Yuan would be able to progress to the return to void stage in a very short time. The pillar of white light descending from the holy vermilion flame made Yang Yuan feel as if a white veil had been draped over his body. Extremely powerful flame power was injected into his body, and it lasted for 3 minutes before slowly disappearing. A hint of joy appeared on Yang Yuan's indifferent face as he gave a deep bow to the cheering disciples and elders before leaving the altar. After Yang Yuan left, it was Lu Jiaji's turn to walk toward the spell altar. Lu Jiaji released a scarlet flame feather. This was a mid-grade vermilion bird flame feather. He had been searching for a high-grade vermilion bird flame feather in the mystic realm, but he had been trapped for a few days. In the end, he had only obtained a middle-grade vermilion bird flame feather, which was a little regretful. This time, a white light descended from the holy vermilion flame again, but only a faint layer of light enshrouded Yang Yuan's body, and the light only lasted for about a minute before disappearing. Lu Jiaji heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this. Thank God he had received the approval of the holy vermilion flame. Manifesting a holy flame in his sea of vital energy was a good thing, so he wasn't going to complain about it. The third one, and Lin, please step onto the spell altar. Great Elder Qin Shinran announced. At this moment, all of the tens of thousands of people on the Holy Flame Plaza began to stir as they turned their eyes toward the man standing on the spell altar. And Lin was already used to big events like this, so he didn't appear to be very nervous. Instead, he made his way toward the spell altar and looked up at the holy flame in the sky with curiosity in his eyes. The holy flame was a pure white color, and it was extremely beautiful and pure under the starlight. The light of the white flame would never be extinguished, and it brought a sense of eternal warmth to all the disciples of the Vermilion Bird sect. It was as if its presence could provide them with peace of mind and protect the Vermilion Bird sect for eternity. For some reason, and Lin had a feeling that he was very close to the holy flame. He released the Vermilion Bird Flame Wing from his robes. This was a high-grade Vermilion Bird Flame Wing, with golden flames dancing around it. Ji Yongfang looked at the high-grade Vermilion Bird Flame Wing with indignation on his face. He had worked so hard to obtain a medium-grade Vermilion Bird Flame Wing, but Lin, an outsider who had suddenly joined the Vermilion Bird sect, had obtained a high-grade Vermilion Bird Flame Wing. The Vermilion Bird Flame Wing hovered in the air, waiting to be summoned by the Holy Vermilion Flame. However, a minute passed, and the Holy Vermilion Flame still showed no reaction, and the entire plaza fell silent. The tens of thousands of disciples' expressions shifted. Some of them heaved sighs, some of them wore expressions of disappointment, some of them shook their heads, and some of them were indignant and wanted to defend Lin. They all knew that Lin had failed, and Lin hadn't received the approval of the Holy Vermilion Flame. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips and clenched her fists as she stared at the man standing on the spell altar. And Lin's expression also faltered slightly. He knew that there was a high chance that he would be rejected by the Holy Vermilion Flame, but he was still quite surprised and regretful that it had actually happened to him. Ji Yongfang faltered slightly upon seeing this before a joyful expression appeared on his face. So what if Lin had obtained a high-grade Vermilion Bird Flame Wing? If he couldn't receive the approval of the Holy Vermilion Flame, he was still trash. Ji Yongfang recalled what he had said to Lin, and a sense of satisfaction welled up in his heart as a sense of superiority welled up in his heart. He suddenly heaved a forlorn sigh. Sigh, brother Lin, don't just stand there like an idiot. I'm also very sad that I didn't receive the approval of the Holy Vermilion Flame. However, you won't be able to obtain what doesn't belong to you. So hurry up and come down. Ji Yongfang's voice was very loud, and he had used his vital energy so that all of the disciples present could hear him. Everyone faltered slightly upon hearing this. Ji Yongfang's words weren't wrong, but it made Lin feel even more awkward. Mo Hai, Lu Jiaji, Shangguanyi, and Yang Yuan were naturally aware of Ji Yongfang's sinister intentions, and they all glared at Ji Yongfang with rage burning in their eyes. Brother Ji, please enlighten me next time we meet at the flame forging arena, Mo Hai said with a dark expression. You've already crossed the line. Yang Yuan was also looking at Ji Yongfang. Trash. Shangguan, he was even more direct. Ji Yongfang spoke with an innocent expression. What do you all mean by that? I'm just trying to persuade brother and Lin to come down from the spell altar. I'm also very sad that he didn't receive the approval of the Holy Vermilion Flame. His words rang out across the entire plaza, and many of the disciples were repulsed, but none of them dared to retort. And Lin was also looking at Ji Yongfang. He didn't think that Ji Yongfang would jump in at a time like this. Ji Yongfang was just about to continue when he suddenly thought back to his childhood when his parents had parted ways. He thought back to the grief he had felt when he was unable to receive any response from Su Xiaolan. He thought back to the emotional blow that Enlin and Su Xiaolan had received when they returned from the Vermilion Bird sect hand in hand. He thought back to the grief he felt when the autumn leaves fell to the ground. Boundless grief welled up in Ji Yongfang's heart, and he suddenly burst into loud sobs. Ji Yongfang had already attracted the attention of tens of thousands of disciples, and all of them stared at him with shock and incredulity on their faces as tears flowed down his face. "Mommy, wah. I'm so sad. Wah." The entire plaza fell deathly silent as everyone stared blankly at Ji Yongfang. Mo Hai, Lu Jiaji, Yang Yuan, and Shangguan were also a little confused. Ji Yongfang was crying so hard and so sorrowful. Could it be that Ji Yongfang was really sad that Enlin didn't receive the approval of the Holy Vermilion Flame? Had they misunderstood Ji Yongfang? Thus, Ji Yongfang sobbed his heart out in front of tens of thousands of people. "Ha ha ha, Elder Ji, your son sure is an interesting one." Elder Zhu laughed heartily. Elder Ji, whose sideburns had turned slightly white, wore a dark expression and didn't say anything. What a huge embarrassment! Crying his heart out in front of tens of thousands of disciples was something that the other disciples and elders would laugh at for 100 years. He didn't know why Ji Yongfang was acting like this either. He couldn't sense any interference from any other powers. Could it be that his son really was that close to Enlin? Enlin clasped his hands behind his back and sighed. "Brother Ji, you don't have to be so sad. I haven't even cried yet, so why are you crying?" His words traveled into the ears of all the disciples, and all of them couldn't help but burst into laughter. What would it look like to have tens of thousands of disciples laughing at once? It was an earth-shattering sight. Ji Yongfang was overcome with grief upon hearing this earth-shattering laughter. His reputation had been completely ruined, and he couldn't help but cry even harder. Chapter 432. Ji Yongfang cried for a long while before finally catching his breath. He pointed at Enlin with tears in his eyes and roared with rage. "Enlin, you must have done this. What did you do to me?" "Enough!" A loud voice cut off Ji Yongfang's words. "What a disgrace!" A middle-aged man yelled with rage in his voice. Ji Yongfang stared blankly at the man who had spoken before closing his mouth. A stream of tears flowed down his face in an extremely pitiful manner. "Father, why?" Elder Ji didn't want to see Ji Yongfang like this. If it weren't for the fact that he still had to accept the power bestowed upon him by the Holy Flame, he would have dragged him away from the plaza a long time ago. "This has nothing to do with Enlin. Perhaps you're just too sad." Elder Ji sighed with resignation. Ji Yongfang's expression faltered as grief welled up in his heart, and he began to sob again. Elder Ji turned his gaze toward the sky. He was too ashamed to look. All of the disciples on the plaza had also grown tired from laughing, and they all began to massage their faces and stomachs. Mo Hai was still laughing heartily as he looked at Ji Yongfang with an expression of admiration. "Brother Ji, you're the only one I admire when it comes to crying." The other person who was still laughing was Lan Yen. She didn't have a great sense of humor to begin with, and she almost fainted from laughing so hard at the sight of Ji Yongfang bawling his eyes out. As she laughed, she cursed at Ji Yongfang for attempting to murder her and making her die of laughter. Su Xiaolan spoke up for Lan Yen with a resigned expression in case Lan Yen really died from laughter. "Enlin, if you haven't received the acknowledgement of the Holy Flame, then come down." Just as everyone was about to calm down, Elder Zhu spoke in a gentle voice. Enlin nodded and was just about to withdraw his vermilion bird flame wings when the holy vermilion flame in the sky suddenly glowed with a brilliant light. Boom! The white holy flame suddenly exploded before transforming into a white vermilion bird that circled in the starry sky. All of the elders' expressions shifted upon seeing this, while all of the disciples stared up at the sky with dumbstruck expressions. The holy flame manifested itself? Why is that? Grand Elder Qin Shinran asked in shock. And Lin stood on the spell altar. and before he could even make a move, his sea of vital energy surged violently. The white phoenix let out a joyful cry, and a surge of power flowed out of its body, passing through his sea of vital energy to the space between Enlin's eyebrows. Then it rushed out of his eyebrows and flew toward the golden projection of the vermilion bird flame wing. The golden projection of the vermilion bird flame wing slowly solidified into a white feather that floated in the air. All of the tens of thousands of disciples were dumbstruck, and Enlin was completely baffled. Why did it turn white? Did the feather lose its color? I got a fake feather, so the holy flame doesn't want to admit it. Enlin suddenly asked. Hearing this, everyone rolled their eyes. Lan Yen, who had just managed to catch her breath, almost burst into laughter. She struggled to support her slender waist and prevent herself from falling. Some of the experienced and knowledgeable elders, on the other hand, looked at the solid white feather in shock. Could this be the true feather of the vermilion bird? There's no mistaking the flame fluctuations, and that feather really is the true feather of the vermilion bird. How could there be a true feather of the vermilion bird here? The one Enlin had just released was a projection. A burst of power was released from his body, and only then did the projection of the vermilion bird flame wing materialize. Who would have thought that we would see the true feather of the vermilion bird here? This is going to be interesting. The elders didn't try to hide their conversation, so most of the disciples had a rough idea of what was going on. It didn't matter what the true feather of the vermilion bird was, as long as it was very powerful. Tens of thousands of disciples turned to the white-robed man on the spell altar again with reverence and fanaticism in their eyes. Su Xiaolan looked at the man in the limelight with a dainty smile. I knew you wouldn't leave like this. That's not your style. Right at this moment, the white vermilion bird in the sky opened its beak, and the true feather of the vermilion bird flew toward the holy flame vermilion bird before being swallowed by it. An extremely carefree cry sounded from the holy flame vermilion bird's beak, immediately following which it transformed into a ball of holy flame again. Everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. And Lin looked at the holy flame, and all of the disciples and elders also looked at the holy flame, as if they were waiting for something to happen. 2 minutes passed, and nothing happened. CK, are we going to dine and dash? And Lin couldn't help but curse at the holy flame. Uffed. Many of the disciples were amused by Lin's nonsensical words, and a good impression of him welled up in their hearts. Lan Yen burst into laughter again, and if it weren't for the fact that Su Xiaolan had beaten her to it, she would definitely chase after him. Su Xiaolan glared at Lan Yen upon hearing this, and she harumphed coldly without saying anything. She had no choice. If she told her best friend that there was no relationship between her and Enlin, then she would be in far too much danger. However, if she warned her best friend, then wouldn't she be admitting to their relationship? A faint blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face, and she could only pout angrily as she turned to look elsewhere. Ji Yongfang finally stopped crying, and he made his way toward Enlin with his red and swollen eyes. He was feeling a little better at the sight of Enlin still being rejected by the holy vermilion flame, and he was just about to say something. A pillar of white light suddenly descended from the holy flame in the sky toward Enlin. Boom! Ji Yongfang was already a little feeble from crying, and he tumbled to the ground after being struck by the pillar of white light. The disciples standing in the distance were also struck by the pillar of white light. Thankfully, the elders intervened in time and no one was injured. Everyone stared at Enlin in shock, and they were all at a loss for words. Enlin was completely unscathed, and the white light surged into his body like a ferocious beast before transforming into the purest form of flame energy. Is that the power of the holy flame? A disciple rubbed his eyes as he spoke in a daze. It should be. I've been at the Vermilion Bird sect for several hundred years, and I've never seen such a thrilling power bestowed upon someone. This doesn't make any king sense. All the prodigies are rendered speechless, and all the prodigies are on the verge of tears. A core disciple exclaimed, "That's way too scary. Can Lin handle it?" Some of the disciples expressed their concern. If the medium-grade projection of the vermilion bird flamewing was bestowed with the power of a drop of water, and the high-grade projection of the vermilion bird flamewing was bestowed with the power of a wet body, then Lin was bestowed with the power of a deluge of water. Ji Yongfang was dumbstruck. How could this be? How could this be? And Lin was also dumbstruck. He turned to the holy vermilion flame and pleaded, "Please slow down. My body won't be able to handle it if it's too fast." Ji Yongfang almost threw up a mouthful of blood upon hearing this. Even the sect disciples felt their chests constrict. The elders of the vermilion bird sect also rolled their eyes, but they didn't intervene. And Lin could feel the holy flame surging into his body. The 4 divine flames combined with the holy flame to become purer and more substantial, and it was slowly progressing toward a higher level. At the same time, a white holy flame appeared in his sea of vital energy. The phoenix in his sea of vital energy let loose an elated cry before pouncing toward the holy flame. And Kiran's eyes also lit up, and he pounced toward the holy flame with his mouth wide open. The 2 of them had just managed to achieve a temporary peace, but they were now competitors again. Boom, 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 his sea of vital energy surged as white flames wreaked havoc and lightning crackled. And Lin. Chapter 433. And Kiran and the White Phoenix finally stopped their battle as the holy flames continued to flow into their sea of vital energy. They seemed to have reached a consensus, which was to absorb the holy flames first. The White Phoenix continued to absorb the holy flames as its body slowly materialized, and its wings became more and more plump. Vast holy might proliferated outward, crashing into the vast sea of vital energy. And Kiran slowly swallowed the white holy flames as if they were milk, and he smacked his lips from time to time with an expression of bliss and elation. And Lin heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this, and he looked up at the holy vermilion flame in the sky, hoping that it wouldn't stop bestowing energy so soon. At the very least, he wanted Kiran to have his fill first. Just as he hoped, the white light continued to descend for an extremely long time this time. 3 minutes passed, and there was still no sign of it weakening. 5 minutes passed, and there was still no sign of it weakening. And Lin was getting a little bored, and he sat down on the spell altar to meditate. All of the elders of the Vermilion Bird sect grimaced at the sight of the holy flames pouring down like a river, and they felt an indescribable sense of heartache. Tens of thousands of sect disciples stared at the man sitting at the center of the spell altar with envy and jealousy on their faces, and they wanted nothing more than to take his place. Mo Hai spoke with an envious expression. The intermediate grade Vermilion Bird Flamewing lasts for about a minute, and the high grade Vermilion Bird Flamewing lasts for 3 minutes. This time, Lin has been absorbing for a whole 5 minutes, and there's still no sign of it weakening. Sigh. I don't even know what to say. Brother Lin is a blessed man. Yang Yuan nodded with a smile. Much more blessed than I am, Shangguan Yi said in a faint voice. Lu Jieji looked at the woman beside him. What a load of bullsh, *T. Ji Yongfang stared blankly at Lin, and he was at a complete loss for words. Lin had been paying close attention to the situation in his sea of vital energy this entire time, and he was worried that the 2 of them would start fighting again. And Kiran's body was slowly beginning to change as his stomach bulged. Boom! His sea of vital energy tremored violently. Immediately afterward, a white flame insignia appeared on the golden baby's forehead. At the same time, a number suddenly appeared in front of his chest. The number jumped from 182 to 2, and 3 absolute beginning characters appeared. Yin Ying. And Lin's stomach bulged more and more before exploding violently, transforming into countless specks of golden light that flowed into Lin's meridians. And Lin's body suddenly erupted with golden light. Immediately after, a golden silk coat draped over his body, as if he was wearing a holy robe. He opened his eyes, which were filled with golden lightning. The might of the Lord of all lightning erupted, spreading out in all directions. The tens of thousands of disciples felt that the man in the center of the altar had suddenly become imposing. My God, what exactly is that? It's so dazzling. What a terrifying aura. Could this be an additional effect of the holy flame? Are you stupid? Can't you see the golden lightning flowing around his body? This is an extremely terrifying lightning power. What does it have to do with the holy fire? And Lin is impressive indeed. He can actually trigger such a phenomenon after being baptized by the holy fire. As the golden robe draped over Enlin's body, he suddenly attained a deeper understanding of Enlin. A mantra was inscribed in his mind, which contained the true intent of many lightning techniques. He closed his eyes, and the golden robe slowly disappeared as his aura quickly receded. When he opened his eyes again, his black pupils were as calm as the surface of a lake, without a single ripple. It was as if everything had disappeared. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief as the pressure on them lessened. Phew, that was so scary. Can't the baptism of the holy flame be a little easier? Only a freak like Brother Enlin could cause such a huge commotion. Let me take a breather. Many of the disciples were completely shaken by the phenomenon on the spell altar. However, to their surprise, the phenomenon appeared again. Heaven and earth suddenly tremored violently. Immediately afterward, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within a radius of 5 kilometers surged violently, forming a massive cyclone that engulfed the starry sky. The vast vital energy was imbued with the might of heaven and earth, and it transformed into a massive tornado that surged into Enlin's body. Tens of thousands of disciples stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. Some of them couldn't help but rub their eyes, and some of them even clasped their hands over their chests as if they had just received a massive shock. And Mo Hai was astonished. Can someone tell me what the F*CK is going on? Lu Jiaji blinked in confusion. Isn't it obvious? Brother Enlin made a breakthrough, and Mo Hai yelled, I'm not blind. I'm asking how he managed to make a breakthrough. Lu Jiaji replied with a numb expression. Of course it's because he received enlightenment after receiving the holy flame, and that's why he made a breakthrough. I'm just a salted fish, so this is the only answer I can give you. Mo Hai. Brother Enlin has broken through to the soul formation intermediate stage, right? To be able to reach this rank at the age of 20 has already broken the record of our Vermilion Bird sect. It looks like he's already the #1 prodigy of the Vermilion Bird sect. Yang Yuan smiled. Ji Yongfeng, it's fake, it's all fake, and Lin's aura continued to climb. He knew that Kirin's weight had reached 1 kilogram, which meant that he had completed his mission. He was already mentally prepared for this, so his expression was extremely calm and collected. Even though all of the elders of the Vermilion Bird sect were extremely knowledgeable, they were still unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Great Elder Qin Shinran, who was presiding over the ceremony, turned to Zhu Yuanzhou. Elder Zhu, the prodigy you've recruited is way too scary. He's only just arrived, and the entire Vermilion Bird sect is already in an uproar. Zhu Yuanzhou stroked his crimson beard with a smile on his face. My niece's Dao partner is just too restless. He's always stirring up big events. I'll tell him to keep a low profile next time. Chen Xinran, Lan Yan stared at Enlin with wide eyes and clicked her tongue in wonder. Be careful, Xiaolan. Enlin is going to be harassed by a lot of bees and butterflies in the future. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at Lan Yan before continuing to stare at the man at the center of the spell altar with mixed emotions in her heart. Enlin was running so fast that it was very difficult for her to keep up. Not long after, Enlin's aura broke through the soul formation intermediate stage and officially progressed to the soul formation intermediate stage. The vital energy vortex in the sky had already dissipated, but the light from the holy flame had yet to dissipate. And Lin had nothing to do, so he swallowed a 7th grade immortal pill, the Dragon Soul Pill. This Dragon Soul Pill was an immortal pill that he had obtained from killing the Dark Knight Monarch. It could enhance the user's consciousness and solidify their soul formation stage cultivation base, so it was perfect for him to take now. The pill was pure white and translucent, and the power of the dragon's soul rippled outward as the roar of a dragon reverberated through the air. All of the sect disciples on the plaza immediately identified this as an immortal pill. They were then greeted by the sight of Enlin casually swallowing the immortal pill before lying down on the spell altar. Tens of thousands of disciples' eyes were filled with envy. The holy flame flowed like a river, breaking through like eating a meal, and the immortal pill was like jelly beans. Did he have to be so happy? Brother Enlin really lives up to his reputation. I didn't believe his legendary feats in the celestial court at first, but I'm starting to believe it now. Aw, I'm so excited. I'm going to ask him for a voice transmission talisman tomorrow. How long do you guys think the holy flame has lasted? F***CK. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. It's been at least 10 minutes. I calculated the time. It's already been 18 minutes, 6 times the duration of a high-grade vermilion bird flamewing. What a bully! The great elder of the vermilion bird sect, Shinran, wore a pained expression as he turned to the man beside him. Elder Zhu, this Enlin really is scary. Is there no end to this F***king nonsense? An awkward expression also appeared on Zhu Yuanzhou's face. He seemed to have absorbed a little too much of the holy flame. Just as all of the disciples were discussing spiritedly among themselves, the white phoenix in Enlin's sea of vital energy let loose a crisp cry as it completed some kind of transformation. Holy might began to fill his entire sea of vital energy, and the white holy flame converged to form a white cloud that hovered in the air above his sea of vital energy. The holy vermilion flame seemed to have sensed something, and the white pillar of light began to slowly shrink. All of the disciples and elders heaved sighs of relief upon seeing this. The baptism was finally over. Chapter 434. And Lin looked on at the slowly receding holy flame before slowly standing up and stretching lazily. The plaza was a little quiet, and everyone seemed to have forgotten to cheer and applaud as they stared blankly at Enlin, as if they were worried that Enlin still had some tricks up his sleeve. Enlin smiled and extended an earnest salute to the tens of thousands of disciples and elders on the plaza before walking off the spell altar with a hint of longing in his eyes. It's over? All of the disciples finally came to their senses, and the atmosphere on the holy flame plaza instantly exploded. Tens of thousands of disciples applauded in celebration, and some of them were even chanting Enlin's name. Enlin was a disciple of the Vermilion Bird sect, after all, so he was one of them. Even though they were a little envious and jealous, they still didn't hold back in expressing their blessings and awe. Enlin made his way over to Mo Hai and the others before sighing with satisfaction. Not bad. Lu Jiaji's face convulsed with displeasure. Come on, this is what you call a freakish harvest. If you call this not bad, then I'm a super poor person. Mo Hai stared at Enlin with reverence on his face. When you said you were going to reach the return to void stage in 10 years, I thought you were just putting on a front. But now I believe you. You really are my brother. You're so bad, *SS. Don't forget your brother when you're rich. Enlin chuckled. Don't worry, I'll protect you from now on. Right at this moment, Great Elder Shinran's voice sounded again. Number 4. Jiongfang, please make your way to the spell altar. Ji Yongfang's heart jolted upon hearing this, and he immediately recovered from his previous state of defeat. He turned to look at Enlin, and a strong sense of indignation welled up in his heart, but he was no longer able to muster up any thoughts of resistance. He made his way toward the spell altar. This was supposed to be a moment for everyone, but all of the disciples around him were still discussing Enlin, and all of them turned to look at Enlin, who was standing outside the spell altar. Ji Yongfang gritted his teeth and released the vermilion bird flame wing. This was a crimson flame wing, which meant that it was a mid-tier flame wing, the same as Lu Jiaji's. The surrounding disciples weren't too surprised. After all, Ji Yongfang was only at the soul formation initial stage. Even with special treasures, it would be difficult for him to defeat a heavenly flame rank mutant beast. Hence, the mid-grade vermilion bird flame feather suited his strength. The discussions in the sacred flame square gradually quieted down. This was a sign of respect for the talented disciples of the sections. Everyone turned to look at the holy vermilion flame in anticipation of its activation. Ji Yongfang was also staring at the holy vermilion flame with a nervous expression as he prayed for the holy vermilion flame to acknowledge him. Otherwise, he would truly be defeated. They didn't know if it was an illusion, but everyone felt that the pure white holy flame in the sky was somewhat withered, as if it had been hollowed out after a great battle. A burst of mysterious ripples suddenly swept forth, drawing the mid-grade vermilion bird flame feather into the air, where it fused as one with the holy flame. Ji Yongfang clenched his fists tightly, his body trembling slightly. He was overjoyed. Success, success at last. Elder Ji also heaved a light sigh of relief. Thank God his son hadn't been completely humiliated. As the vermilion bird flame feather fused with the holy flame, a white light began to fly toward Ji Yongfang. This light was like a wisp of white smoke that slowly attached itself to the surface of Ji Yongfang's body before dissipating after 10 seconds. Ji Yongfang was completely dumbstruck. The entire venue fell deathly silent. Countless disciples' eyes widened in shock as they stared at Ji Yongfang, who was standing at the center of the spell altar. Am I seeing things? Isn't he using a mid-grade vermilion bird flame feather? Why did the holy flame only last for 10 seconds? Shouldn't it last for a minute? Not only was the duration of the holy flame short, but the amount of holy flame light it was able to draw out also seemed to be very small. It looks like only the inferior grade vermilion bird flame feather is able to produce such a phenomenon, right? Inferior grade vermilion bird flame feather? Ah, how long has it been since an inferior grade vermilion bird flame feather appeared in the sect? Poor Brother G! Elder G slammed his palm onto the table. What the hell is going on? All of the other elders looked at one another with dumbstruck expressions. In the end, Great Elder Qin Shinran coughed lightly before explaining in a loud voice. Don't you see the holy flame? It's a little dim. It's most likely because it expended too much flame power to manifest the holy flame, and that's why it's like this. Qin Shinran's words flowed through the entire plaza like a clear spring. As opposed to saying that he was explaining to Elder G, it was more accurate to say that he was explaining to the tens of thousands of disciples present. All of the disciples were astonished. What kind of explanation was that? But it sounded very reasonable. Ji Yongfang's head was buzzing as he heard Qin Shinran's explanation. His eyes were filled with confusion as he murmured to himself, "How could this be? How could this be? Why am I always the one getting hurt?" Perhaps it was because he was used to crying, but 2 streams of tears began to flow from his eyes. He glared at Enlin with a resentful expression. "It's all your fault. Why do I have to take the blame for your trouble? I'm innocent." Enlin rolled his eyes and couldn't be bothered to speak to Ji Yongfang. Mo Hai heaved a forlorn sigh. Sigh. Brother Ji, don't just stand there like an idiot. The fact that you received less holy vermilion flame can only mean that you were unlucky. As your brother, I'm also very sad. However, you won't be able to obtain what doesn't belong to you. So hurry up and come down. All of the disciples were initially sympathetic toward Ji Yongfang, but they couldn't help but burst into laughter upon hearing Mo Hai's words. This was exactly what Ji Yongfang had said to Enlin before. Ji Yongfang heard Mo Hai's words and the laughter of some of the disciples, and he almost fainted from rage. He gritted his teeth and staggered down the spell altar before glaring at Mo Hai with a hateful expression. Don't celebrate too early. The holy vermilion flame is quite weak now. So do you think you'll be able to get away with it? You're next, and I'm waiting to see a good show. Mo Hai's expression faltered, and he could no longer muster up any joy. F***CK. Ji Yongfang was right. What could he do? He turned to look at Enlin with a bitter expression. Brother, you've screwed me over. Enlin's lips twitched, and he pretended not to hear Mo Hai's words. Ji Yongfang chuckled coldly. Hee, brother Enlin sure is a troublemaker. You're so selfish that you only care about absorbing the holy flame for yourself. But you've screwed over all of the prodigies of the Vermilion Bird sect. He purposely used an immortal spell to amplify his voice so that his words could be heard throughout the entire plaza. Many of the disciples knew that Ji Yongfang was purposely targeting Enlin, and all of them expressed their dissatisfaction. However, there was also a group of people who remained silent as Ji Yongfang's words did make sense. Even though Enlin couldn't control the amount of flame energy released by the holy flame, it did affect the prodigies of the other prodigies of the Vermilion Bird sect. Grand Elder Qin Shinran's voice sounded again. Fifth, Mo Hai, please come up the spell altar. A faint smile appeared on Mo Hai's face as he patted Enlin's shoulder. I won't blame you for this. After all, you made Ji Yongfang cry twice, and I'm very happy for you, haha, Enlin. Ji Yongfang's chest constricted, and he almost threw up a mouthful of blood. Mo Hai made his way toward the spell altar before unleashing his high-grade vermilion bird flame wing. The holy flame activated the flame wing again before engulfing it. Mo Hai heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this. At least he wouldn't be alone anymore. If he could obtain a mid-grade flame wing or a low-grade flame wing, it would be quite a good result. The holy vermilion bird flame erupted with a brilliant white light before descending upon Mo Hai. This white light created a layer of white gauze over Mo Hai's body. An extremely rich and powerful flame energy flowed relentlessly into his body. Mo Hai blinked in a daze. This amount of flame energy seemed to be a little too much. All of the other disciples also noticed this problem. The amount of flame energy released by Mo Hai seemed to be the same as Yang Yuan's, showing no signs of weakening. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face. He was glad that he wasn't a burden to Mo Hai. As for Ji Yongfang, his mouth gaped open with a dazed expression. In the end, the white light lasted for 3 minutes before slowly dissipating. It was indeed no different from Yang Yuan's flame energy, so it was very normal. Everyone fell silent again. It was clearly very normal, but everyone's expressions were very interesting. Elder Ji massaged his brows. Why is it normal again? Is someone targeting my son? Chun Shinran took a deep breath. The holy flame has probably recovered after a period of rest, which is why the holy flame's light is back to normal. His words echoed throughout the entire plaza. All of the disciples heard this and felt that it made perfect sense. Ji Yongfang was rooted to the spot again after hearing Qin Shinran's explanation, and his head began to ring. He looked at Mo Hai with a dazed expression before looking up at the holy flame. How could this be? How could this be? Why am I always the one getting hurt? Boundless grief welled up in his heart, and he cried like a child that weighed over 100 kilograms. Chapter 435. Tens of thousands of disciples applauded and cheered in unison to celebrate Mo Hai's successful absorption of the holy flame. Then, many disciples looked at Ji Yongfang with sympathy, looking at this legendary yet tragic character. The holy flame just had to be so dispirited when he was on the spell altar. What bad luck. I was initially quite upset that Enlin absorbed too much holy flame and Brother Mo Hai couldn't absorb any, but I feel much better now. Oi! What are you going to make Brother Ji think? He's already cried 3 times in front of tens of thousands of disciples. What a pitiful sight. I didn't believe Mo Hai when he said Brother G was the #1 crying god of the Vermilion Bird sect, but now I do. This level of misery is almost comparable to that of Sister Shangguan E. That's right. We must hold it in and stop laughing at him. All right, we'll laugh at him tomorrow. Jiongfang had been dealt a heavy blow, and he didn't dare to bicker with Enlin anymore. All he wanted was for the ceremony to end as soon as possible so that he could leave this place as soon as possible. Elder Ji stared intently at the holy flame, but he couldn't detect anything. In the end, he could only shake his head with a forlorn sigh and avert his gaze. And Mo Hai returned to Enlin's side with a forced smile on his face. Brother, you're really something. Look at how badly you've bullied Brother Ji. He'll probably miss you for the rest of his life. And Lin rolled his eyes at Mo Hai. I'm not taking the blame for this. I didn't do anything from beginning to end. He's the one suffering the consequences of his own actions, so don't blame it on me. Ji Yongfang's body swayed slightly upon hearing this, and he stumbled a few steps to the side. And Mo Hai laughed unkindly and said, That's the most flirtatious thing. At this moment, the Vermilion Bird sect's great elder Qin Shinran announced, #6, Shangguan Yi, please proceed to the spell altar. Go, Sister Shangguan. And Lin cheered. Relax, don't worry about anything else, Lu Jiaji chimed in. Shangguan Yi nodded at Enlin and the others. She was already mentally prepared for failure, so there wasn't much anxiety on her face as she made her way toward the spell altar without uttering a single word. Tens of thousands of disciples also began to focus their attention on the white-robed woman. If Enlin and Ji Yongfang were unexpected surprises, then Shangguan was an unexpected surprise. All of the disciples felt like it would be strange if nothing happened to Shangguan Yi. Even the elders in the elder seating area focused their attention on the woman on the altar and made all sorts of preparations. Elder Xiao, how's the weather? Are there any abnormal energy fluctuations? No, the weather within 100 miles is normal. No abnormal energy was detected. Elder Zhu, have you discovered any unknown objects approaching? There were 3 strange beasts that were acting strangely within a 40-kilometer radius, but I've already burned them to death. Elder Lu, Shangguan Yi released her high-grade vermilion bird flame wing before looking up at the holy vermilion flame like a devout devotee. All of the disciples began to discuss among themselves. Do you guys think Sister Shangguan Yi will receive the approval of the holy vermilion flame? That's a bit of a stretch. She's always been very unlucky. Furthermore, it's not like you guys don't know that her constitution is completely incompatible with the power of fire. With a constitution like that, how could she possibly receive the light of the holy vermilion flame? You can't say that. She's had a lot of accidents happen to her. If that's the case, then it wouldn't be an accident. So Sister Shangguan will definitely succeed this time. Even if something unexpected happens, it's not going to be a good thing. What could possibly happen? It's not like she's going to freeze the holy vermilion flame into nothingness. Right at this moment, the pure white flame began to tremor slightly, and the power to purify everything began to proliferate outward. A burst of power descended from the sky and drew the projection of the vermilion bird flame wing into the sky, where it was then engulfed by the holy vermilion flame. Tears welled up in the eyes of the tens of thousands of disciples as an excited thought welled up in their hearts. Shangguan Yi had finally succeeded. Shangguan Yi was like a beautiful white lotus blooming in the night sky. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she was on the verge of tears. How many years had it been? She had been holding on to something and working hard in a certain direction. She loved the Vermilion Bird sect more than anyone else, and she wanted to use fire-type spell techniques more than anyone else. Today, she had finally received the acknowledgement of the holy vermilion flame. The projection of the holy flame could unclog one's meridians and materialize a holy flame in one sea of vital energy, thereby allowing one to truly use fire-type spell techniques. The white holy flame began to stir, and it was about to unleash the white light of the holy flame. Right at this moment, the holy flame suddenly flared up, and a boundless white light lit up the entire night sky. Immediately afterward, the holy flame transformed into a holy sword over a kilometer in length that hung high in the sky. Everyone was dumbstruck, and they didn't understand what was going on. Shangguan Yi's body swayed as a bitter feeling welled up in her heart. Why did accidents always happen? The 20 or so elders in the spectator stands were taken aback at first, but they soon stood up at the same time as their auras erupted forth. 10 of them had even reached the return to void stage, and their combined auras were powerful enough to crush the sky. The holy sword turned and stabbed toward a certain spot in the sky. Boom! A white flaming sword projection pierced through the sky like a silver river, slicing the sky in half for over 50 kilometers. Most of the residents of the Baihua state could see this fearsome sword projection. It was extremely dazzling and invincible in the night sky, as if it were going to incinerate the entire sky. Tens of thousands of disciples were completely dumbstruck, and they had no idea what was going on. And Lin's heart thumped with unease, as if an extremely terrifying power was approaching. He silently pulled out his evil-slaying sword and focused his gaze on a certain spot in the sky. The sword projection dissipated, and a massive gash appeared where its power had passed. Blue blood slowly flowed from the gash, and a fishy yet aromatic scent wafted through the air. The holy vermilion flame really does live up to its reputation. To think that it was able to slay a void immortal beast from our holy land with a single strike. However, it was still a step too slow. A voice imbued with boundless imperial might sounded, striking a sense of subservience into the hearts of all who heard it. This was the voice of a high and mighty empress, and it was as if everyone else in this world were ants aside from her. The gash slowly expanded from several hundred feet in size to a massive black gash that was close to 10 kilometers in width. From afar, it looked like a massive scar had been torn open in the air. Everyone from the Vermilion Bird sect, I would like to borrow your holy flame. Another cold voice sounded, and it was also imbued with extremely fearsome imperial might, but it was a little immature. And Lin's pupils contracted upon hearing this voice, and he was rooted to the spot as waves of shock surged through his heart. Holy F***, it's them again. Chapter 436. All of the tens of thousands of disciples finally came to their senses. Their sect had been targeted by an extremely powerful force. Grand Elder Chin Shinran harumphed coldly. How dare you covet our sect's most precious treasure? Do you really think our Vermilion Bird sect is that easy to bully? Boom! A massive red spell formation appeared above the canopy of the tree, sealing off the space within a radius of several dozen kilometers. The power of countless sect disciples converged upon the spell formation. A gargantuan crimson phoenix materialized within the spell formation, and it spread its wings for several kilometers, obscuring the entire sky. Boundless flames burst forth from the phoenix's body, warping the entire sky before transforming into gargantuan waves that surged toward the inky black rift. I'm here precisely because your Vermilion Bird sect is not to be bullied. A woman shrouded in blue divine light walked out of the crack. Her face could not be seen clearly. She wore a golden imperial robe with an imperial crown on her head, and a blue starlight appeared behind her. The power of extreme frost engulfed the entire heaven and earth, causing snow and ice to fall from the sky and completely repressing the flames of the phoenix. She held an antiquated jade seal in her right hand, and she made a grabbing motion toward the oncoming flames with her left hand. Crack! Countless flames were frozen in midair like beautiful ice sculptures before slowly evaporating into nothingness. Right at this moment, 9 ice dragons of several thousand feet in length also began to emerge from the rift, each of which exuded an extremely fearsome aura. Behind them, a series of golden ropes were attached to a throne of ice, upon which sat an exquisitely beautiful woman with a white staff in her hand. She looked down at the tens of thousands of people on the ground below with an expressionless face, as if she were an immutable block of ice. Behind her, there were several hundred silver-haired women wielding ice blades, all of which exuded extremely powerful auras. Emohai's eyes widened with shock. Holy F asterisk CK. These are all snow maidens, right? Why did the holy glacial lands come to our sect to steal our holy flame? How dare they? Yan Yuan's expression darkened. The great empress, the high priestess, and almost half of the palace leaders of the 36 holy palaces, our Vermilion Bird sect, is in trouble, and Lin stared speechlessly at the snow maiden in the sky. These snow maidens were getting more and more arrogant. Not long ago, they had gone to the 10,000 Spirits Immortal sect to steal their disciples, and now they were coming to the Vermilion Bird sect to steal their holy flame. Could they please stop? Since you're here, then stay. The punishment of the celestial court is coming. You won't be able to escape. A distant voice suddenly rang out. Then, boundless golden flames began to cover the sky. A pair of hands that were several kilometers wide clasped together toward the snow maidens, creating an extremely fearsome cage of flames that sealed away all of the power of frost. The great heaven-sealing palm. It's the great elder Situfeng. Some core disciples saw the scene in the sky and said with blazing eyes. Many of the disciples who had been intimidated by the aura of the snow maidens in the sky were also invigorated, and a raging battle intent welled up in their hearts. Even the elders felt reassured. Grand Elder Situfeng was a legendary figure of the Vermilion Bird sect. He had already reached the Tao integration stage tens of thousands of years ago. His prestige was even higher than that of the sect leader, and he was the pillar of the Vermilion Bird sect. As long as he was present, the Vermilion Bird sect would never fail. They would never fear any powerful enemies. The woman who was enshrouded in divine light tossed the ancient jade seal in her right hand into the sky. We are indeed unable to withstand the punishment of the celestial court, but I can delay their arrival. During this period of time, I can do many things. Imperial seal realm stripping. Boom! Heaven and earth suddenly darkened as some kind of earth-shattering power enshrouded the space within a radius of over 50 kilometers before instantly stripping it away from this world. And Lin was struck by a rush of dizziness before he found himself situated in a murky gray space. There was no starlight here, nor was there any direction. There was only eternal chaos. Great Empress, how dare you waste the power of the Imperial Seal? Do you not want the fate of the holy glacial lands anymore? Sidu Feng's enraged voice sounded. It was clear that the situation had already spiraled out of his control. The holy glacial lands are already on the brink of destruction. It's not a waste to waste thousands of years of the fate of the holy glacial lands in order to save the Holy Land. The blue star behind the great Empress began to expand in size as a boundless frosty intent descended. A blue power proliferated outward, congealing the space in its wake. A man in a red robe with a head of white hair and an extremely delicate facial features appeared in the air before extending a hand toward the ancient jade seal, hovering in midair. Golden flames erupted from his palm, and it was as if a dazzling sun had appeared in the murky gray space before crashing directly toward the jade seal. However, a power that was powerful enough to freeze time and space suddenly appeared around the jade seal, preventing the man's palm from advancing any further. Boom! The power of the flaming palm collided with the jade seal, and a terrifying golden shockwave radiated outward in all directions, melting everything within a radius of 5 kilometers. At this moment, the divine tree beneath the Holy Flame Plaza suddenly emitted a faint white light, which nullified the shockwave and protected the tens of thousands of sect disciples below. Let's go! The great Empress issued an imperial order before stepping into the air and making her way toward Situfeng. The 9 crouching sky ice dragons pounced toward the formation's spirit phoenix, and the 2 of them engaged in a fierce battle. The high priest, wielding a white staff, stepped into the air toward the pure, white, holy vermilion flame. Sect leader Zhu Shuze is temporarily unable to return from the demonic flame realm, so you're no match for us. Our holy land has no intention of fighting, and we only wish to borrow your holy vermilion flame for 10 years. After 10 years, we'll return it to you with both hands, and we'll also offer our holy land's imperial bone marrow as compensation. What do you think, Great Elder? Meng Ji looked at Great Elder Qin Shinran as she spoke in an indifferent voice, and Lin's lips twitched upon hearing this. Last time, they had taken advantage of the fact that the sect leader of the 10,000 Spirits Immortal sect was being held off by the Great Empress, and the Grand Elder was in seclusion. This time they were taking advantage of the fact that the sect leader of the Vermilion Bird sect was unable to return from the foreign realm. These snow maidens really did live up to their nickname of home invasion demons. They were F*King, addicted to home invasion. F*CK them, they're already here. Why are they still wasting their breath on these B*cheese? Qin Shinran didn't even get a chance to say anything before Elder Zhu let loose a torrent of abuse. Meng Ji ignored Elder Zhu's words. Instead, she turned to Qin Shinran and awaited his reply. The Grand Elder was being held off by the Great Empress, and they had a lot more powerful cultivators than the Vermilion Bird sect. If they could resolve this peacefully, she didn't want to provoke such a colossus. A faint smile appeared on Qin Shinran's face. The imperial bone marrow is extremely precious, and it's worth no less than a divine tool. However, the holy vermilion flame is the pillar of our sect and the pillar of our sect. We wouldn't even be willing to borrow the holy vermilion flame for a day or even a moment, let alone 10 years. Our sect's disciples have no qualms about fighting. We'll protect the holy vermilion flame with our lives. We'd rather die than retreat. Tens of thousands of disciples roared in unison, and their voices spread throughout the entire space. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning within their bodies, and they all had a firm belief that their sect would never crumble. The holy vermilion flame could not be stolen, and their sect could not be humiliated. Their pride made it so that they wouldn't back down even in the face of a more powerful enemy. Even if they were moths flying into a flame, they would still use their bodies to release the last bit of heat. Chapter 437. No one from the Vermilion Bird sect refused to back down. Their battle intent converged to form a mystical power that injected itself into the spell formation, causing the surrounding temperature to rise drastically. High Priestess Meng Ji heaved a faint sigh, and her eyes became cold and emotionless again. "Let's begin!" Several hundred snow maidens charged toward the holy vermilion flame as she spoke in a cold voice. "Begin!" Grand Elder Qin Shinran roared, and a vast aura burst forth from the 20 or so elders, transforming into streaks of dazzling light that formed a protective barrier around the holy vermilion flame. Among the tens of thousands of sect disciples, over 2,000 spirit nurturing stage disciples also flew toward the holy vermilion flame. Everyone else who couldn't fly unleashed their full power to inject themselves into the spell formation, transforming the Vermilion Bird sect's territory into a world of flames that kept the oncoming frost at bay. The holy vermilion flame sensed the danger it was in, and it unleashed another burst of white flames, which materialized into a white holy sword that slashed down upon the snow maidens. The murky gray space was instantly parted by the white sword projection. The sword projection was of the purest yang attribute, and it was capable of tearing through and melting everything in its path. All of the snow maidens' expressions shifted drastically as they sensed the power imbued within the holy sword projection. This was because the power imbued within the holy sword had already transcended beyond the return to void stage and was comparable to an attack from a Tao integration stage mighty figure. Meng Ji had already appeared at the forefront of the snow maidens, and she pointed her staff toward the unstoppable sword projection. A rainbow box about the size of a palm suddenly appeared behind her, from which a rainbow light burst forth. The rainbow light was imbued with 7 different types of power, each of which represented a paramount power of the Tao realm. They all flew toward the white sword projection and completely absorbed it like a sponge. The rainbow light then expanded again, transforming into 7 different immortal spirits that charged toward the holy vermilion flame. Even the divine Tao box, left behind by the ice matriarch, has appeared. The imperial seal and the divine Tao box have both appeared at the same time. Elder Ji was astonished as a hint of fear welled up in his heart. Chun Shinran didn't say anything as he materialized a flaming dragon over 10,000 feet in length to protect the holy vermilion flame. He stood at the forefront and looked at the oncoming army of snow maidens with a determined expression on his face. The flaming dragon behind him opened its mouth to blast forth a torrent of flames that surged toward the snow maidens with unstoppable force. All of the other elders unleashed ferocious attacks upon the oncoming snow maidens. Their flames surged like an ocean, forming a sea of flames that spanned several dozen kilometers before crashing down upon the snow maidens. The 16 Holy Palace leaders were all returned to void stage mighty figures, and they weren't afraid of the sea of flames in the slightest. The entire space instantly turned into a world of ice and fire. One side was filled with raging flames, while the other side was filled with endless ice. One side was filled with boundless flames, while the other was filled with boundless frost. These immortal spirits were manifested from the power of the divine Tao box, and they were immune to all spell techniques. Only Tao integration stage beings could attack these immortal spirits. Under Ji Ji Mu Ji's hers, the Ji had Ji Chan could do, the Ji against the Tao King of Masters. Palace stage cultivators could down, but they and had and holy and they Ji and Ji the 9 returned to void stage elders were also pinned down by the 13 holy palace leaders, and they were unable to break through the defensive line. The remaining soul formation stage elders and core disciples were also engaged in battle with over 100 soul formation stage snow maidens, and the resulting shockwaves transformed the entire sky into a realm of ice and fire. Over 2,000 spirit nurturing stage disciples formed up into groups of a few dozen to form a combined attack formation to battle the extremely powerful snow maidens. However, no one was able to do anything to the 7 Tao realm immortal spirits. Any energy that came into contact with the Tao realm immortal spirits would be pulverized into nothingness by an unknown power. And Lin spread open his wings of wind and slashed a soul formation stage, snow maiden to the ground before turning his eyes to the holy vermilion flame in the sky. The area around the holy vermilion flame had become the main battlefield for the return to void stage mighty figures. Elder Zhu and Elder Ji were also among them, but even they were unable to stop the 7 immortal spirits from closing in. Su Xiaolan was also engaged in battle with a soul formation intermediate stage, snow maiden not far away from him. Her domain was very extravagant, and it was surrounded by a vast expanse of lightning and flames within a radius of 100 feet. There were lightning dragons and golden phoenixes circling around the perimeter. The combination of the powers of the dragon and phoenix allowed her to attack in a myriad of different ways, and each and every one of her attacks was imbued with immense power. Even though her enemies were soul formation intermediate stage snow maidens, Su Xiaolan was still able to keep them at bay. However, she also turned her eyes toward the holy vermilion flame in the sky with a hint of anxiety in her eyes. Soon, a flaming tiger flew toward certain location within the holy vermilion flame before unleashing a pillar of flames into the sky, isolating all attacks within a radius of 100 feet. Fire spirit in position. A rock tortoise flew to the tiger's side, its body transforming into a huge mountain. Earth spirit in position. A blue water dragon flew toward the holy vermilion flame before transforming into a pillar of water that soared into the sky, isolating all attacks within a radius of 100 feet from the tiger. Water spirit in position. Water and fire combined to unleash an extremely fearsome, sealing intent. Everyone could sense that the flames of the holy vermilion flame seemed to have dimmed significantly. Expressions of grief and rage appeared on the faces of tens of thousands of sect disciples, and they roared as they unleashed their powers in the hopes of driving the frosty power away. The battle in the sky became even more intense as one snow maiden after another was incinerated into nothingness by the flames, and one sect disciple after another was frozen solid, losing all signs of life. A white long sword hovered beside the water dragon, and a peerlessly sharp sword intent soared into the sky. Metal spirit in position. A green tree spirit flew over to the side of the massive mountain with a green light radiating from its body. It then unleashed a green pillar of light, upon which rich life force energy erupted forth for a radius of 5 kilometers, healing the injuries of all the snow maidens and disciples of the Vermilion Bird sect. Wood spirit in position. When the 5 elements were in position, an extremely massive and mystical spell formation began to appear beneath the holy vermilion flame. The terrifying sealing power emanating from the spell formation dimmed all the flames between heaven and earth, and the holy vermilion flame was only half as bright as before. A black disk began to appear directly above the holy vermilion flame. It opened up slightly, revealing a vast expanse of darkness within, as if it could engulf everything in this world. Chun Shinran's heart sank to the bottom when he saw the black disc. This was an ancient magic tool, the flame sealing disc. Apparently, this was a magic tool left behind by the Flame Emperor in ancient times. It could contain all divine flames and seal the power of the peerless holy vermilion flame. This was something that the Vermilion Bird sect had been searching for a very long time. Who would have thought that it would be in the hands of the Snow Maidens? With the flame-sealing disc and the divine Tao box, the Snow Maidens could indeed seal the holy vermilion flame within the flame-sealing disc and bring it to the holy glacial lands. A determined expression appeared on Chun Shinran's face as he crushed a red bead in his hand. Crimson flames erupted from his body as his aura soared explosively once again, and he charged toward Mengji with all his might. The 3 holy palace leaders were knocked aside by the unstoppable crimson flames, and expressions of shock and astonishment appeared on their faces. One of the holy palace leaders even had one of her arms melted by the crimson flames. Blue blood gushed forth, and the crimson flames continued to corrode her body with no signs of stopping. Chun Shinran charged toward Mengji, who was controlling the divine Tao box, and he clenched his fist before launching an almighty punch. A screen of light appeared behind Mengji, which was an image of an ice mural worshipped by all living beings. She pointed her scepter at Chun Shinran, and a boundless power of faith was released from the scepter, turning into an extremely cold aura that froze everything within a radius of 1 kilometer, including Chun Shinran, who was charging towards her. He was also frozen in place. Chun Shinran wore an expression of indignation on his face, but Mengji remained expressionless. Lightning spirit return. A lightning bird unleashed a pillar of lightning that soared into the sky beside the white longsword. 6 of the 7 spirits had already returned to their positions, and most of the sect disciples were filled with grief and indignation, but there was nothing they could do. Even the elders felt a sense of sorrow welling up in their hearts. However, right at this moment, the pillar of lightning suddenly changed direction and flew past Chun Shinran like a water snake, breaking through the domain of extreme frost before crashing into Mengji's body. The bolt of lightning left a trail of destruction in its wake, and Mengji was knocked back over 10,000 feet. Heaven and earth instantly fell silent as everyone was rooted to the spot. All of the Snow Maidens and the elders and disciples of the Vermilion Bird sect turned their eyes toward High Priestess Meng. Mengji's white robe was a little charred and tattered, revealing her pristine, snowy skin. There were also some charred marks on some parts of her body, indicating that she had clearly sustained some minor injuries. Her silver hair danced in the wind, and her pure golden eyes were filled with confusion as she stared at the lightning spirit. The lightning bird blinked in confusion as it rubbed its head with its wings, indicating that it didn't know what had happened either. Chapter 438. The atmosphere was extremely peculiar. Both sides were completely dumbstruck as they didn't understand why the pillar of lightning would suddenly attack Mengji. The lightning on Enlin's fingertip began to dissipate, concealing his power and fame. He had initially wanted to control the lightning spirit, but the lightning spirit was imbued with the power of the Tao realm, so his lightning manipulation technique was unable to control it. As such, he could only choose to control the pillar of lightning unleashed by the lightning spirit. He didn't think that he would be able to injure Meng Ji under these circumstances. Su Xiaolan turned toward Enlin with a faint smile before turning her eyes on her opponent again. Chen Xinran took advantage of the opportunity that Meng Ji had been knocked back to break free. Ha ha ha. The heavens are protecting our vermilion bird sect. Stop wasting your time, you be asterisk cheese. The great elder of the vermilion bird sect was also cursing along with Zhu Yuanzhou. The snow maidens were far too detestable, and that attack just then was far too satisfying. Meng Ji's expression shifted slightly, and her brows furrowed slightly. Severing the seal on the divine Tao box had expended a lot of her energy and time. It wasn't impossible for her to reactivate the seal, but she didn't even know who had done this. What if the same thing happened again? She hesitated momentarily before boundless power surged out of her body again. Lightning spirit in position. The Thunderbird, which was covered in flashing lightning, once again unleashed a pillar of lightning that soared into the sky. The terrifying might of the lightning annihilated everything within a radius of 10 zhang. Chen Xinran's heart sank upon seeing this, and he pounced toward Meng Ji again. But this time, the 3 palace masters of the sacred palace had already flown to Chen Xinran's side, firmly restraining him. In the instant that the pillar of lightning soared into the sky, it suddenly changed direction again. It was like a divine sort of lightning that was capable of slicing heaven and earth apart, tearing through the air as it hurtled toward Meng Ji with devastating power. Countless stars suddenly flashed through Meng Ji's eyes, and the ice mural behind her glowed brightly before transforming into a rainbow divine barrier that shielded her. Boom! The lightning exploded, and the terrifying energy tore open deep, pitch-black cracks in the space within a radius of several kilometers. However, the divine light barrier only trembled violently, but it did not break. The projection of a blue goddess appeared behind Meng Ji. She opened her all-encompassing eyes and looked around before settling her gaze on a certain young man. The goddess began to dissipate, and Meng Ji turned toward the young man. And Lin felt like he was being watched, and his legs went weak. "It's you." Meng Ji stared at Enlin, and her voice was as cold as the wind. This time, most of the people who were fighting were stunned. They turned to look at Enlin with shock and disbelief on their faces. They had many speculations as to why the sealing of the sacred flame had been interrupted. Some people thought that a certain mystic treasure of the Vermilion Bird sect had played a role, while others thought that a mysterious and powerful elder was responsible for this. However, almost no one thought that this matter was actually related to a soul formation, Cultivator. "High Priest, I'm innocent." And Lin turned to Meng Ji with an innocent expression and raised his hands in surrender. Meng Ji's expression remained unchanged. "I can't be certain that it was you, but based on the ice god's divination, you're the most likely culprit." She pointed her divine staff toward Enlin, and the ice mural behind her suddenly extended for over a kilometer as divine might surged and rocked the entire space around her. A pillar of white light shot forth from her staff, piercing through the air for several kilometers before crashing down upon Enlin with an aura of destruction. The pillar of white light eclipsed the light of the entire world as a devastating power erupted forth. Normal soul formation stage cultivators would be instantly killed upon contact, But this was a power that could instantly kill a return to void stage mighty figure. And Lin. Countless cries erupted. Never would they have thought that High Priest Meng Ji would expend so much energy to unleash such a fearsome attack against a mere soul formation stage cultivator like Lin. Several elders risked being severely wounded to unleash a dozen or so defensive spell techniques in succession in front of Lin. Boom, boom, boom. The pillar of white light was like the blade of divine retribution as it tore through the dozen or so defensive spell techniques with unstoppable force. The power of Meng Ji's attack had been significantly diminished, but it was still powerful enough to severely wound a return to void stage mighty figure. As for soul formation stage cultivators, they would be instantly reduced to invisible particles. In that instant, Lin pulled out his chaotic alloy brick and positioned it in front of him. He was then completely immobilized as the space around him had been sealed by a spell technique. Boom! The pillar of light pierced through heaven and earth, puncturing a massive hole in the crown of the divine tree. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, flew toward the hole with all her might. All of the elders of the Vermilion Bird sect wore extremely dark expressions. They had a chance to stop the holy flame from being sealed away by the divine Dao box. But Meng Ji's attack was far too decisive, resulting in the death of Lin and their final chance at survival. Meng Ji had used the divine Dao box twice in a row, only to have it disrupted, and she had expended a lot of energy to unleash another attack. Her face was a little pale, but for the sake of the holy vermilion flame, it was worth it. She turned her gaze toward the holy flame again. Lightning spirit in position. Boom! The pillar of lightning soared into the sky, and the sealing force increased even further as the holy vermilion flame grew dimmer and dimmer. A transparent, humanoid wind spirit appeared beside the lightning bird, and a white tornado began to appear around its body. The tornado grew longer and longer until it resembled a water snake that connected heaven and earth. Wind spirit in position. Divine Dao Seal activate. A boundless white light erupted from Meng Ji's staff again as boundless power burst forth. The rainbow box emanated a rainbow ripple that pierced through space before merging into the bodies of the 7 Dao Mirror Realm immortal spirits. The immortal spirits raised their heads to look up, and the projection of a woman in a rainbow dress appeared between heaven and earth. She was over 10,000 feet tall, and her aura, which was imbued with the might of the divine Tao, enshrouded the entire space, making it impossible for anyone to resist her. It was as if they were facing a paramount goddess. This was the woman who had founded the Holy Glacial Lands, the Ice Matriarch. The Ice Matriarch extended a hand toward the holy vermilion flame. In that instant, the scorching white holy flame was compressed into a white ball by a terrifying power. The white ball was drawn toward the flame-sealing disk in the sky. This was the final step, and borrowing the power of the Ice Matriarch was extremely taxing on her energy. Meng Ji gritted her teeth and activated the divine Dao box with all her might. Right at this moment, the pillar of lightning changed direction again, and like a sword slicing through heaven and earth, it descended upon Meng Ji's body with an extremely terrifying, destructive power. Boom! Boundless lightning exploded, transforming the entire sky into a sea of lightning that knocked Meng Ji flying for several kilometers again. The Vermilion Bird sect and the Snow Maidens fell silent again as they stared at Meng Ji with astonishment on their faces. Meng Ji's dazzling long hair had already been charred black, and her high priestess robe was in tatters. Black smoke rose from her body, and she appeared to be in an extremely sorry state. There was a trace of blood on her exquisitely beautiful features, and she looked around with confusion on her face before focusing her gaze on the hole in the sky, where a beautiful woman was supporting a severely wounded young man. The young man raised his middle finger at her as his voice erupted into the heavens. "Trash Snow Maiden, how dare you attack a mere soul formation stage cultivator like me? What else can you do aside from picking on the weak?" No matter how many times that stupid lightning spirit unleashes those pillars of lightning, I, your grandpa Lin, will always be able to make them strike you. The Vermilion Bird sect and the Snow Maiden army were all dumbstruck upon hearing Lin's words. Meng Ji's chest constricted with rage, and she opened her mouth to retort, only to find that she didn't have the vocabulary to say anything. Furthermore, it didn't fit her status, so she could only stand in midair and sulk. The flames of fury in her eyes threatened to burn Lin into ashes. All of the Snow Maidens stared at Lin as if he were a freak, and they were too shocked to say anything. Domineering, domineering. And Mo Hai could not find any other adjectives. So Lin is such a badass. Lu Jiaji murmured to himself. And Lin will win. The Vermilion Bird sect will win. Tens of thousands of sect disciples erupted into thunderous cheers as their morale soared to new heights. Tears welled up in their eyes. They were on the brink of defeat, but Lin had stood up and reignited the flames of their victory. He had also dealt the most ferocious blow to their enemies. In the eyes of all of the sect disciples, Lin's entire body was glowing with light. Chapter 439. At this moment, 5 elders had already rushed toward Lin and set up an extremely powerful defensive formation. Lin was the key to breaking the seal on the divine Tao. The elders had already failed once due to their negligence, and Lin had almost died as a result. They couldn't let the high priestess get her way again. Meng Ji was clearly enraged. Divine light erupted from her pure golden eyes, dyeing the entire sky a golden color as if they were imbued with some kind of mighty power of heaven and earth. Her domain of extreme frost instantly extended for close to 10 kilometers, and all of the Vermilion Bird sect disciples within its range were frozen into ice sculptures. She closed in on Lin with each step she took. Do you think I can't kill you just because you have someone protecting you? She raised her staff high into the air and was just about to attack. Kacha! The sound of something shattering spread out. Meng Ji was struck by some kind of backlash, and blue blood seeped from the corners of her lips. Many people could see that the projection of the ice matriarch had already begun to crack. The holy flame also reverted back to its original shape and began to burn. All of the Vermilion Bird sect disciples erupted into raucous cheers upon seeing this. Meng Ji turned toward the ice matriarch with a bitter expression on her face. She knew that if she were to use her power against Lin now, she wouldn't be able to maintain the projection of the ice matriarch. She didn't have the power to summon the ice matriarch a second time. So be it, a faint sigh could be heard. Meng Ji turned around and flew toward the holy flame instead of toward Lin. The light from the divine Tao box behind her became brighter again. The lightning bird seemed to have been drawn back to the divine Tao box. Is she going to give up? Elder Ji asked with anticipation in his eyes. Chen Shinran was originally standing in front of Lin, but crimson flames erupted from his body upon seeing Meng Ji's plight, and he transformed into a flaming meteor as he flew toward Meng Ji. I'll leave the rest to you, Meng Ji said in a cold voice. Close to 10 return to Void Stage, Snow Maidens arrived before Meng Ji before unleashing a series of terrifying ice spell techniques to impede Chen Shinran and the other elders. Meng Ji arrived at the spot where the lightning bird had been standing just a moment ago, and a pillar of faint golden light soared into the sky. I will replace the Tao of lightning with my body. She looked at the ice matriarch's projection with a hint of determination on her face. In an extremely distant space, golden flames engulfed thousands of miles, and the divine radiance of ice and snow illuminated the heavens. The Empress looked at the golden pillar of light beside the holy flame and let out a soft sigh. She seemed to be feeling helpless and regretful at the same time. The cracks on the ice matriarch's body slowly healed, and she nodded at Meng Ji. Due to the fact that she had forcibly used her own power to replace the lightning spirit's power, the terrifying backlash was relentlessly corroding Meng Ji's body. Cracks began to appear on her snowy skin, from which blue blood began to seep. High Priest. Countless snow maidens stared at Meng Ji with grief on their faces. Their emotions transformed into power, causing the surrounding temperature to drop even further. Meng Ji's aura was growing weaker and weaker, but the holy flame sealing power was becoming more and more fearsome. The ice matriarch extended her hand toward the holy flame again, squeezing it into a white ball of light before guiding it into the flame-sealing disk. Countless vermilion bird sect elders and disciples pounced toward the holy flames, but they were all kept at bay by the powerful snow maidens. And Lin gritted his teeth as he stared at Meng Ji. Never would he have thought that Meng Ji would use her own body to replace the lightning spirit. As such, he really didn't know what to do to stop Meng Ji. After all, there was simply too much of a disparity between their powers, and Lin had only joined the Vermilion Bird sect for a few days. But an indescribable sense of rage and indignation welled up in his heart at the sight of the holy flame that had been protecting the sect for so long being snatched away. He pulled out a 7th-grade immortal pill from his storage ring before swallowing it. This was the spirit regeneration pill that Yang Yuan had given him. It had extremely potent regenerative properties when consumed during severe injuries, as well as the ability to enhance one's life force. It was only thanks to the chaotic alloy brick that he managed to escape from Meng Ji's hands. Even so, he was still struck by the shock waves of the attack and sustained severe injuries. He had to make sure that he was in his best condition. He couldn't give up yet. He quickly activated his evergreen technique, and the immortal pill's effects were completely activated as it continued to heal in Lin's injuries. The white ball of light materialized by the holy vermilion flame was sent into the flame-sealing disk by the ice matriarch. The temperature on the battlefield above the divine tree suddenly plummeted. All of the sect disciples felt as if they had lost something in their hearts. Some of the more vulnerable disciples stared up at the flame-sealing disk in the sky before bursting into tears. Su Xiaolan's fists were clenched tightly as her body trembled uncontrollably. If it weren't for the fact that Lin was holding her back, she would have most likely charged toward Meng Ji with all her might. The ice matriarch began to dissipate, and the 6 immortal spirits all returned to the divine Tao box. At the same time, the flame-sealing disk began to fly toward Meng Ji. Meng Ji caught the flame-sealing disk, and her features were extremely pale, but her eyes were extremely bright. The hope of our tribe lies here. I finally succeeded. A forlorn smile appeared on her face as she threw up another mouthful of blood. Her body was like a flickering candle in the wind, and it looked as if it could fall at any moment. High Priestess, a snow maiden flew toward Meng Ji to support her. It's not over yet. I still have things to do. Meng Ji's golden eyes were a little dim, but boundless divine light began to erupt from her scepter, as if it was trying to squeeze out every last shred of her power. Holy Land Spatial Gate, open. An unparalleled power erupted from the scepter, striking at a certain part of the void. In the end, it tore open a circular spatial door with a diameter of 100 feet. Everyone could see the vast expanse of white snow and ice within the spatial gate. A series of translucent snowflakes even drifted into this space from within the spatial gate. Mission accomplished, retreat. Meng Ji's voice reverberated throughout the entire space, and the morale of the surviving snow maidens was greatly boosted as they began to retreat toward the spatial gate. I'll cover your retreat, a paramount voice sounded. Immediately afterward, the area within a radius of over a kilometer around the spatial gate was enshrouded by a deep blue frosty energy, transforming it into a restricted area. An elder of the sect was chasing after a snow maiden, but he didn't even have a chance to react before he was struck by the terrifying frosty energy and instantly transformed into an ice sculpture. Elder Songyang, Zhu Yuan Zhou roared with grief and indignation. Elder Songyang was a soul formation final stage powerful being, but he couldn't even last a single second after coming into contact with that frosty energy. Most of the snow maidens had retreated into the area enshrouded by the frosty energy before charging toward the spatial gate. Tens of thousands of Vermilion Bird sect disciples looked on with dejected expressions. Some of the core disciples couldn't resist the urge to charge into the area of death, but they were all held back by the rational people around them. Only returned to void stage mighty figures were allowed to enter. Meng Ji heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing the spatial gate, and she passed the flame-sealing disc to a holy palace leader beside her. Qingli, take it back to the holy city safely. She closed her eyes and fell unconscious as she spoke. High Priestess. Qing Li's expression shifted slightly as she held onto Meng Ji. Many snow maidens began to pass through the spatial gate, and Qing Li enshrouded Meng Ji with a spell technique as she prepared to enter the spatial gate. However, right at this moment, a burst of pure yang power descended from the sky, piercing through the frosty energy domain within a radius of over a kilometer before crashing into the spatial gate like a sharp sword. Boom! The monstrous power tore open a passageway in the frosty energy domain, instantly incinerating a dozen or so powerful snow maidens in its path. The flames then formed a golden passageway that led directly to the massive spatial gate. We haven't lost yet. Give chase! Grand Elder Situ Feng's voice sounded from afar, and countless sect disciples were reinvigorated. Give chase! Tens of thousands of sect disciples roared in unison as they activated the spell formation in a frenzy, and boundless flame power pulverized the surrounding snow and ice. Hundreds of powerful sect disciples surged with battle intent and rushed in the direction of the space gate. Qing Li's expression shifted as she led Meng Ji and over 100 snow maidens into the spatial gate. Aside from the 10 holy palace leaders, almost all of the surviving snow maidens had already passed through the spatial gate. 15 elders and more than 50 extremely powerful core disciples broke through the defenses of the holy palace master and chased after him, beginning to enter the realm gate of the Holy Land. Grand Elder Qin Shinran and 2 returned to Void Stage elders unleashed the power of the sect spell formation to hold off the 10 Holy Palace leaders. And Lin and Su Xiaolan followed the sect army into the spatial gate. Chapter 440. This was a vast expanse of snowy white land, and the frosty air cut into Lin's face like a sharp knife. The sun was peeking over the horizon, but it was obscured by layers of thick, snowy clouds. The Vermilion Bird sect disciples responsible for pursuing the holy flame had already broken through the defensive perimeter and arrived at this expanse of snowy land, only to find that the snow maidens were nowhere to be seen. They must have some sort of spell technique to conceal their auras. Otherwise, there's no way I wouldn't be able to detect them. Elder Zhu's hair fluttered in the wind like flames. Elder Qinling, it's all up to you now. Elder Ji turned toward a white-haired elder. The elderly elder nodded and made his way out from the crowd. He stood in the center of the crowd with a mirror in his hand. Mirror heaven and earth, stars trail. Chen Ling spoke lightly, and the mirror suddenly glowed with a brilliant light. Immediately afterward, a dark star chart appeared before everyone's eyes. In this star chart, there were nearly 200 stars moving. Among them, 6 stars were as bright as the sun and were moving in different directions. More than 60 bright stars were divided into 20 groups and were also moving forward. More than 100 extremely dim stars were divided into 40 groups and were moving quickly. The 6 stars represented the 6 holy palace leaders. Over 60 bright stars represented over 60 snow maidens of the soul formation stage, and over 100 dim stars represented snow maidens of the spirit nurturing stage. These be asterisk cheese sure are cunning. They're flying toward the holy city in different directions. They've probably predicted that we'll be able to track them down using spell techniques, so they're purposely splitting up so that we won't know which path the flame-sealing disc is taking. Elder Zhu was enraged. Chunling didn't say anything. 6 star talismans flew toward the 6 return to Void Stage elders. Including Chunling, there were only 7 return to Void Stage cultivators present. It's all up to you now. Even if you have to sacrifice your lives, you must bring the holy flame back. Chunling bowed slightly. The 6 elders didn't say anything. They only nodded with determined expressions on their faces. They tore open a spatial gate with the star talismans in hand and began to pursue the targets on the star talismans. Immediately afterward, 20 star talismans flew toward the elders and core disciples. Su Xiaolan also received a star talisman on which were Su Xiaolan and Enlin's names. It was obvious that Enlin and Su Xiaolan needed to work together. Enlin looked at the stars on the star talisman to find that there were 6 bright stars, which meant that there were 6 soul formation stage cultivators on the other side. Thank God Chunling trusted him and Su Xiaolan so much. This time, all the members received the mission. Please, if the target enters the holy city, you have to give up the mission. This was because there were 20 sacred palace masters who resided in the sacred city. Although they couldn't come out, every one of them was extremely powerful in the sacred city. Leave the 40 different groups to me, Chunling said softly. Then his body suddenly erupted with countless starlight. These starlight condensed into Chunling's appearance. There were more than 40 of them. This was the first time Enlin had seen this kind of doppelganger technique, and his eyes widened in shock. However, what was even more surprising to him was that all 40 Chunlings possessed extremely powerful auras, and they were able to tear open a spatial gate in pursuit of Chunling. He couldn't help but mourn for the 40 groups of snow maidens. They were all dead for sure after being pursued by Chunling. A hint of sorrow appeared in Yang Yuan's eyes upon seeing this. However, he quickly erased the sorrow and flew toward the target of the star talismans. Enlin and Su Xiaolan also flew toward the 6 snow maidens indicated by the star talismans. This was the first time Enlin had come to the holy glacial lands. The lands of the holy glacial lands were a vast expanse of silvery white, as if they were a spotless paradise. There were a series of white snow mountains, each of which was over 10,000 feet tall and extremely majestic. Occasionally, there would be snow beasts with white fur, as well as snow maidens in thin clothes walking on the snowy ground. The bone-chilling frosty air was everywhere. If a human without a cultivation base were to be here, the frosty air would seep into their body and completely freeze them, no matter how thick the clothes they were wearing. The snowflakes here were extremely large, several times larger than the snowflakes Enlin had seen in the Kingdom of the 9 States. He could even see the intricate patterns on the snowflakes at a glance. After swallowing an immortal pill, Enlin had already recovered from most of his injuries. Coupled with his soul formation intermediate stage cultivation base, his speed was now comparable to Su Xiaolan's flying sword. They were only about 10 kilometers away from their 6 targets, and the distance between them was rapidly closing. Enlin estimated that they would be able to catch up to them in less than 15 minutes. He didn't have a chance to check his system when he broke through to the soul formation intermediate stage, so he took advantage of this short period of time to check his system. The cultivation base tab had already been updated. Soul formation final stage condition. Put some nice clothes on Kirin. Enlin. All right, the kid had grown up and needed clothes to cover himself. But who could tell him what type of clothes Kirin would wear? And what did he have to do to put some clothes on Kirin? Enlin heaved a forlorn sigh and ignored this ridiculous mission requirement. Instead, he turned his attention to the soul cultivation interface. Aside from the divine might technique and the divine inspection technique, there was another spell technique that he could learn here. Divine simulation technique. Divine simulation technique condition. Defeat 2 return to void stage enemies. Enlin's expression faltered slightly upon seeing the conditions for obtaining this spell technique. Then he turned his gaze away. He had defeated enemies of a higher cultivation base than him many times in the past. As a spirit-nurturing stage cultivator, he had defeated countless soul formation stage enemies. However, the return to void stage was different from the soul formation stage. The gap between the two was extremely vast. Just the spatial power alone was enough to stun Enlin. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that there was an insurmountable gap between them. Even though he was a soul formation final stage cultivator, he didn't dare to say that he could face return to void initial stage enemies head-on. Thus, he decided to wait until he reached the return to void stage before learning the divine simulation technique. He shook his head with a disappointed expression. It looked like he wouldn't be able to complete the 2 missions in a short period of time. He could only push them to the back of his mind for now. The star talisman drew closer and closer. Soon, the distance between the 2 of them and the snow maidens was less than 5 kilometers. Let's conceal our auras. Otherwise, if the 6 of them discover us and split up, it'll be difficult for us to take care of them, Su Xiaolan suddenly said. And Lin started to conceal his aura upon hearing this. At the same time, he enveloped himself and Su Xiaolan with a thin layer of mist. This mist could conceal them from the detection of spell techniques and divine sense. This was another use of the mist immortal technique. However, it expended more vital energy. As they drew closer and closer, and Lin had already drawn his evil-slaying sword, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. They were less than a kilometer away from the 6 snow maidens. Su Xiaolan's pupils contracted, and she tugged on the corner of Enlin's shirt as she pointed toward one of the snow maidens. Enlin's heart jolted as he looked toward that snow maiden. That snow maiden was holding an ancient bronze disc in her hand. This was the flame-sealing disc that imprisoned the holy vermilion flame. At the same time, the snow maiden who was holding the flame-sealing disc seemed to have detected something. She suddenly turned around and looked toward where Enlin was standing. There was a faint cloud and mist over there. Chapter 441. Enlin and Su Xiaolan's hearts jolted in unison. They had been discovered by the snow maidens. They didn't say anything as they pounced toward the snow maidens with all their might. Wings of wind appeared on Enlin's back. At the same time, he also unleashed his 6 strikes of the war god, instantly increasing his speed drastically. Enlin covered a distance of several hundred meters in the blink of an eye, and his evil-slaying sword slashed down upon the snow maiden with the flame-sealing disc in her hand. Su Xiaolan had also unleashed her full strength from the get-go. Due to the fact that this was a sneak attack, she had used an extremely fast slash technique. Golden wings of flames appeared on her back as lightning crackled from her dragon sparrow sword. Flying lightning slash. The flames transformed into a tornado as lightning tore through the air. Enlin instantly appeared before another snow maiden, and the blue blade of the dragon sparrow sword slashed out like a bolt of lightning. Boom! The snow maiden had no time to react to the sudden attack, and her body was sliced in half just as an expression of shock appeared on her face. Su Xiaolan turned toward Enlin, and her pupils contracted slightly. Enlin's evil-slaying sword had struck a barrier of ice, but the sharp blade was unable to slice through it. The snow maiden with the flame-sealing disc faltered slightly upon seeing Enlin's appearance. Then, a mysterious smile appeared on her face. Who would have thought that it would be you? The heavens are truly watching over us. We can take revenge on the high priestess here. You soul formation stage cultivators won't be enough, right? And Lin spoke with a cold expression. The other 4 snow maidens all stopped in their tracks. They looked at Enlin with indifferent expressions as they held a blue talisman in their hands. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly. She had slain a soul formation stage snow maiden with lightning speed, so these 5 snow maidens should be a little nervous. However, they didn't look as if they were facing a formidable foe. Could it be that they had some kind of power that they could rely on? The snow maiden with the flame-sealing disc in her hand smiled lightly. You're quite powerful, and we can't do anything to you. However, Why do you think the Holy Palace leader would trust us to deliver the flame-sealing disc to the Holy City? And Lin frowned. He could sense that the flame-sealing disc was giving off a faint connection to the white phoenix in his body. It didn't seem fake. Su Xiaolan didn't waste any more words with the Snow Maiden. She unleashed her full power and slashed toward the Snow Maiden, who was holding the flame-sealing disc. Her flaming lightning sword projection slashed through the air and crashed into the defensive barrier of ice. A faint smile appeared on the Snow Maiden's face. Don't waste your energy. There's no way anyone below the return to void stage can break through this ice barrier. The lightning and flames dissipated, and there was not a single crack in the ice barrier around the Snow Lady. The Snow Lady's mocking smile could still be seen. She took out a blue divine talisman and smiled with a hint of determination. Then, I'll show you what despair is somewhere in the holy ice realm. Qing Li had engraved a spell formation on the ground. At the center of the spell formation was the High Priestess, who had already fallen into a deep slumber. A faint smile appeared on her face as she looked up into the sky. She placed a hand over her heart. The High Priestess has returned. The spell formation glowed with a brilliant light, and a golden light suddenly appeared in the sky before crashing into Meng Ji's body. Everything on Meng Ji's body was annihilated by a terrifying power. Only her jade-like body and the white staff slowly rose into the sky before disintegrating into specks of white light. Several dozen kilometers behind Qingli, terrifying flames had almost incinerated the entire sky. An elder of the Vermilion Bird sect was flying toward her at an extremely fast speed. Qing Li heaved a light sigh of relief as she looked at the flames behind her. The High Priestess is safe now. It's time to take care of the holy flame. Her voice had only just fallen when the blue talisman in front of her chest began to glow with a dazzling light. What a coincidence! A smile appeared on her face. You won't be able to escape, demonic woman. The flames in the distance exploded like a volcanic eruption. The elder's eyes were like flames, and even if Qing Li were to use a spatial spell technique to escape, he would still be able to catch up to her. Have you heard of a spell technique called life substitution? Qing Li asked with a faint smile. Her body slowly transformed into specks of light as she spoke. You're not getting away. The elder had already closed in on her, and the space within a radius of 5 kilometers was instantly sealed. However, the specks of light completely ignored the spatial seal and continued to dissipate. The elder was startled and his eyes widened. A spell technique that could ignore space. This was already a divine Dao spell technique. This Snow Maiden was only at the return to void stage and had yet to reach the Dao integration stage. Even if she used a tool, she wouldn't be able to unleash this spell technique. She would have to use some kind of sacrificial body. Then, what was a sacrificial body? Just as the elder was in shock and bewilderment, the specks of light converged again to form another Snow Maiden. Upon seeing this soul formation final stage Snow Maiden, he suddenly understood what a sacrificial body was and what the life substitution technique was. The Snow Maiden that had suddenly appeared wore a determined expression as a long sword of ice and snow over 1,000 feet in length materialized in her hand before slashing toward the elder. Flames burst forth from the elder's body, and he slapped his palm toward the Snow Maiden. Boundless flame power transformed into a palm of flames that could melt all things, instantly reducing the longsword and the Snow Maiden to ashes. His hand trembled uncontrollably as a sense of despair and indignation welled up in his heart. He pulled out the star talisman again, but there were no more specks of light on it. It was clear that the target had already escaped its range of pursuit. So, you were trying to lure me away. I failed. The smiling Snow Maiden disappeared into specks of light before Lin's eyes. The flame-sealing disc hovered in the air, and his heart stirred as he prepared to unleash his full power to break through the ice barrier. At this moment, More specks of light converged to form a graceful woman with waist-length silver hair. She opened her mesmerizing blue eyes and extended a slender hand toward the flame-sealing disk before carefully stowing it away in her robes. Only then did she begin to survey her surroundings. And Lin stood rooted to the spot, as if he had been struck by lightning at the sight of this woman. This was one of the palace leaders of the 36 holy palaces, Qing Li, who had taken the high priestess with her during the battle. Qing Li also caught sight of Lin, and a dazed expression appeared on her face for a split second before a smile appeared on her face. So it's you and Lin. The heavens are truly watching over our tribe. We can avenge the high priestess here and now. And Lin listened to these familiar words, but he was rendered completely speechless. He finally understood what the Snow Maiden had meant. This was AF * King Disaster that had descended from the heavens. Right at this moment, the blue talismans of the other 4 Snow Maidens also lit up. Within a certain snowy mountain, Elder Zhu was engaged in a fierce battle with a Snow Maiden. A crimson, flaming dragon obscured the entire sky, and it roared with rage as it crashed toward the Snow Maiden on the snowy mountain. The Snow Maiden held a frosty white bead in her hand, and as the white bead flashed, her body suddenly shifted to the side for over a kilometer. Boom! The flaming dragon caused a snowy mountain to collapse, and extremely high temperatures instantly vaporized the snow on the mountain before transforming it into a vast expanse of white mist. Ha ha ha! You won't be able to escape. You be *TCH. If you tell me where the flame-sealing disc is, I'll grant you a quick and painless death. Elder Zhu was like a fire god as he charged toward the Snow Maiden with a single step. Right at this moment, the Snow Maiden's blue talisman suddenly lit up. She seemed to have sensed something, and she nodded slightly before activating her blue talisman. Elder Zhu's heart jolted with shock upon seeing the Snow Maiden disintegrate into specks of light. He immediately unleashed a spatial technique, but he was still unable to prevent the Snow Maiden from disintegrating. After that, an unfamiliar Snow Maiden appeared before him. All of your efforts are futile, the Snow Maiden said. Elder Zhu's eyes widened in shock. He suddenly realized a possibility. F * CKU, he roared as he launched a fist toward the Snow Maiden. Bam! The Snow Maiden was disintegrated by the terrifying power of his fist, and a massive crater appeared in the ground behind her. Zhu Yuanzhou's enraged roar shook heaven and earth. Elder Ji's body was enshrouded in blue flames as he made his way toward a certain Snow Maiden. The Snow Maiden lay on the ground with a gaping hole in her abdomen, from which blood seeped into the snow like blue flowers. Tell me where the flame-sealing disc is, and I'll spare your life. Elder Ji raised his hands high into the air. The Snow Maiden activated her blue talisman with a smile on her face before disappearing on the spot. Elder Ji blinked, and another unfamiliar Snow Maiden suddenly appeared before him. Tell me where the flame-sealing disc is, and I'll spare your life. Elder Ji continued. The Snow Maiden smiled. Take a guess. Bam! The Snow Maiden was engulfed by the blue flames, and a bottomless hole was also melted into the ground below her. F * CKU. Elder Ji couldn't help but swear. F * CKU. And Lin also couldn't help but swear. Aside from Qing Li, the other 4 Snow Maidens also transformed into 4 fearsome Holy Palace leaders. This meant that he was now facing 5 return to Void Stage mighty figures.